While seated in a lavish room with Lord Alexid, a woman named Liliage internally affirms that she is still in love with him. She looks at him with a gentle smile, her resolve firm as she acknowledges that despite her feelings, a decision has been made. Steeling herself, she finally speaks his name to get his attention. With a calm expression, she extends a hand and asks Lord Alexid if it is time for them to consider a divorce. Her mind drifts back to her childhood, recalling she was born a princess of the kingdom of Surgua and was married at the young age of 8 into the neighboring western country called Sapphire. This political marriage was arranged to resolve a trade dispute after her mother, following her father's death, wasted the royal fortune, leading to Liliage being cast off to marry Lord Alexid, the eldest son of Duke Brunel. She remembers their first meeting, feeling intimidated by how tall he was as he stood before her. He had immediately knelt down to her level, greeting her gently by name. Seeing that she was frightened and on the verge of tears, he introduced himself as Alexid Noir Brunel with a kind smile. It was then that she fell in love with him, a deep affection that blossomed despite the inappropriate nature of their marriage between an 18-year-old and an 8-year-old. As a child, her greatest wish was to grow up quickly so she could become his true wife. She didn't understand the meaning of marriage at the time and was immediately sent to live under the care of her mother-in-law, Lord Alexid's mother, Lady Henrietta. Lady Henrietta welcomed her with open arms, promising she could live freely and comfortably and encouraging her to play, learn, and grow into a fine noblewoman, treating her like her own daughter. This was a stark contrast to her life in her home country where she was neglected. Lady Henrietta showered her with the care and attention she had never known. Liliage embraced her new life, eagerly studying to become a noble lady worthy of Lord Alexid, her determination fueled by her mother-in-law's pride in her accomplishments. She cherished the warm feeling of being cared for and held on to the dream of one day living with Lord Alexid as a proper married couple. Time passed, and upon turning 16, Liliage made her official debut into society. The scene shifts to a party celebrating her birthday, where guests wish the Viscountess of Fawars well. The title of Viscount of Fawars is one held by the Brunel ducal family, and guests offer their heartfelt congratulations on the beautiful day. Lord Alexid shows concern, asking if she is tired, but Liliage assures him she is fine and that the well wishes from everyone make her truly happy. She is especially happy just to be by his side, a rare occasion since they continued to live separately even after he returned from studying abroad, their contact limited mostly to letters. As other noblewomen praise her beauty, Lord Alexid is called away by a friend, leaving Liliage at the table. She feels immense joy, however, because the party allows her to be near him in the capital city of Sverli, where he works as an assistant to Prince Nikolai. A moment later, she looks around and realizes with a start that he is gone. Worried that she lost sight of him, she asks a nearby guest who informs her that Lord Alexid entered the palace to speak with one of his friends. She thinks fondly of him as she walks, recalling how he rarely shows his emotions but always smiles at her gently when they are together. Nearing the palace, she reaffirms her unwavering feelings for him and her desire to be a worthy wife, despite the political nature of their union. From outside, she hears his voice and pauses, curious about the conversation happening within. She overhears Lord Alexid explaining to his friends that his marriage was purely for maintaining diplomatic relations between Sapphire and Surgua, with one friend noting Liliage's beauty must make him proud. Her heart lurches as she realizes they are talking about her. When asked directly if he feels proud to have such a beautiful wife, Lord Alexid flatly says no, stating that being forced to marry a child is nothing but a huge burden to him. He adds that even now that she has grown up, he doesn't believe he will ever be able to see her as a woman, and the cruel words strike Liliage like a physical blow. His low, harsh voice echoes in her ears, and she stumbles back in shock and pain. The crushing weight of his true feelings settles upon her. She had always known their marriage was a political arrangement, not one born from love. Yet it was on her 16th birthday that she tragically learned how he truly felt about her. The story moves forward 2 years, returning to the present day in Sapphire. Liliage and Lord Alexid are sharing a quiet, formal meal together. Now 18 years old, she has come to visit him, but their interactions are still stiff and their conversations infrequent. They live separate lives. She resides on the family estate to care for the ailing Lady Henrietta, while he lives in the capital, Sverli, attending to Crown Prince Nikolai, but today she came with an important purpose. He breaks the silence, asking how she has been and noting it's unusual for her to visit, and she calmly replies that his mother is treating her with the same kindness as always. Her deep respect for Lady Henrietta, who cared for her since she was a child, is what led her to agree to a certain suggestion her mother-in-law had offered. Lord Elexid reports that his life is unchanging, mentioning he was recently caught in a dispute between the crown prince and his wife, before turning the question back to her. The atmosphere is awkward for Liliaj, as his words from 2 years ago have haunted her ever since. Even with the knowledge of his feelings, a part of her remains hopelessly in love with the man he was in her memories. She finds it strange that he initiated the conversation, a rare occurrence that puts her on edge. He then suggests they move to another location to speak in private. They relocate to a sitting room, but an uncomfortable silence descends as he sips his tea without saying a word. Her anxiety mounts as she wonders if he is bothered by something, or worse, if he has grown to dislike her presence entirely. Believing he feels the same as he did on that day, that she is a burden he can never see as a woman, she musters her courage to speak about their future on this, their 10th anniversary. She declares that she believes it is time for them to seriously consider their future together. Confused, he asks what she means by our future, while she internally pushes aside thoughts of the Brunel family's succession as irrelevant to her true purpose. Taking a steadying breath, she looks at him directly. She asks him plainly if he thinks it is time they consider a divorce. Lord Elexid freezes, his expression one of utter shock and disbelief. He demands she explain herself, and she calmly states her decision to end her one-sided feelings and instead be adopted into the Brunel family. Her mind flashes back to a conversation with Lady Henrietta, where she questioned the point of learning palace etiquette when her husband did not love her and expressed worry for her mother-in-law's health. She recalls the unchanging warmth from Lady Henrietta, who would travel to the Sapphire North Resort every summer, a warmth Liliaj cherished deeply. Another memory surfaces of a formal greeting for Her Highness, Crown Princess Claudine of the Kingdom of Sapphire. The image of the Crown Princess's face lingers in her memory. She remembers the powerful presence of the other woman. Lord Elexid is jolted back to the present, his mind replaying Liliaj's shocking words. "Don't you think it's time we consider a divorce?" A woman confides in her husband, asking if it is time to consider divorce. The following day, the setting shifts to the Grand de Musée Palace. A noblewoman tells a younger woman that her departure is sad but that she cannot be kept by her side forever. The younger woman, in a flashback, worries about her mother-in-law's health and questions if being sent to the palace to learn etiquette is truly necessary. The conversation continues with the mother-in-law dismissing concerns about her health and the recent return to the capital. The younger woman reflects on the warmth she feels from her mother-in-law, Lady Henrietta, who typically spends every summer at the Sapphire North Resort. Henrietta admits she is prone to fevers but insists the younger woman is what matters now, even though she cancelled her summer plans for her sake. She tells the younger woman that after the divorce is finalized, gaining the support of the Crown Princess will give her the strength to face anything. It is revealed that the younger woman is now the companion to Her Highness the Crown Princess, Princess Claudine, an arrangement made by her mother-in-law's connections despite the Brunel family's distance from high society. The mother-in-law asks if the younger woman told her husband she wanted a divorce and what he said in response. The younger woman, Liliaj, recalls that when she told him yesterday, her husband barely said a single word. Her mother-in-law sighs in frustration, calling her own son completely unreliable and apologizing on his behalf, though Liliaj insists it's not necessary. She claims that all the men in the Brunel family are workaholics who neglect their families and have no regard for feelings, with her husband being a prime example, and that Liliaj has reached her limit after 2 years. She declares her desire for her daughter, Lily, to find happiness not with a cold man buried in work, but with a sincere, kind man who values his family. She laments that her own husband, since being appointed to the Ermenid province, hasn't shown his face at all, to the point where she has forgotten what he looks like and doesn't care if he returns. She reflects that a loveless marriage, whether political or arranged, is unbearable and requires mutual closeness, noting her husband was appointed Governor-General 10 years ago and has only returned a few times since. She continues, ashamed that the men of the Brunel family only think of work and that her own son grew up to be just like his cold father, feeling she cannot apologize enough to Liliaj. Liliaj interjects, explaining that when they married she was just a little girl of 8, while Lord Elexid was 18, and she didn't have the ability to run a household. She agrees that it would be illogical to see an 8-year-old as a wife and that her priority then was to live her childhood freely and happily. The mother-in-law concedes that at that stage, Liliaj needed education and ladylike manners, not bridal training, and that Elexid's initial distance might have even been for the best to avoid him seeing her as a little sister. But now that Liliaj is 16 and they still haven't become a real couple, With Alexid hiding behind work and only sending 2 letters a year and a teddy bear for her birthday, she declares the situation completely unacceptable and her son broken. The mother-in-law becomes emotional, apologizing profusely for failing to raise her son properly, while Liliaj tries to comfort her, saying that even the stuffed bear made her happy in its own way. The scene transitions to a grand room within the palace where Liliaj and her mother-in-law are waiting. A tall woman greets Duchess Brunel and Viscountess Fawars, as Liliaj and her mother-in-law bow in respect. The greeter is identified as Crown Princess Claudine of the Kingdom of Sapphire, who tells them there is no need for such formal greetings. Liliaj looks up at the smiling Crown Princess with a sense of awe. Princess Claudine states she has been told about the situation and will support Liliaj if she divorces Viscount Alexid and is adopted into the Brunel ducal family. She promises that she will not allow anyone to slander Liliaj. Liliaj, who was nervous about becoming the princess's companion, is relieved by her kind-hearted nature and expresses her gratitude. The princess feels she should have intervened sooner, acknowledging that part of the responsibility lies with her own husband, and reflects on the rarity of political marriages between children these days, noting she herself married at 16, 5 years ago. The Duchess vows to ensure Liliaj gets the divorce she deserves and will find her a sincere husband who won't neglect his family, stating they have evidence that the marriage to Alexid was a white marriage, meaning unconsummated. The princess advises Liliaj to set aside her worries now that she is at the palace and simply enjoy her time as a young lady, as Liliaj wonders what her duties will actually be. When asked about her duties, the princess explains that Liliaj will primarily be a conversation companion, but will also help prepare for tea parties, handle invitations, and occasionally play with her daughters. Princess Claudine also mentions an annual musical performance, and having heard that Liliaj is a skilled violinist, invites her to take part this year, which Liliaj happily agrees to. The princess kindly advises her not to push herself too hard from the start, calling her a diligent girl. She also requests that Liliaj call her Claudine in private settings, reserving formal titles for official occasions, and says she will call her Liliaj in return. Claudine then rings a bell to summon Lady Garson, who will teach Liliaj the details of her duties. Lady Garson introduces herself politely to the group in the lavishly decorated room. The scene shifts to a man, Lord Alexid, sitting at a desk piled with books, his head in his hands in apparent distress. He sighs, haunted by the memory of Liliaj's face as she asked him for a divorce. He shouts in frustration, startling an aide who asks if he is okay, while internally he thinks that the day he always secretly feared has finally come. That night, when she came and told him she wanted a divorce, he was left stunned. Before he could even process her words, she had already left the room, his memory of the event a blur as Crown Prince Nikolai's voice breaks through his daze. Prince Nikolai observes that Alexid is obviously not well and looks as pale as a ghost, so he came to check on him, knowing him well from their teenage years studying abroad. Alexid apologizes for causing concern and tries to dismiss it, but the prince insists they take a break and mentions he has something to ask him as a friend. 2 cups of coffee are placed on a table as they sit down to talk. The prince brings up Alexid's wife, noting she recently returned to Spheri after a long absence, which worries him because the security situation in the province has gotten worse. Alexid remains silent, unable to tell his friend that she has just asked for a divorce, as the prince states the situation is a serious issue that can't be ignored. The prince directs his frustration towards the royal police, questioning what they are doing about the infamous thief who has been stirring up trouble by stealing only from high-ranking families. He mentions that the thief even sends bold statements to newspapers announcing his crimes, but they still haven't caught him, though similarities between cases are being noticed. Changing the subject, the prince teases Alexid, finding it amusing that the cold-hearted man was recently preoccupied with rearranging his schedule for a dinner and choosing an emerald brooch that matched his wife's eye color for her birthday. The prince then casually mentions he heard that Lady Liliaj became the crown princess's companion in the royal palace just yesterday, causing Alexid to react with shock. Alexid demands to know what is going on and for what reason this has happened. His mind flashes to an image of Liliaj as he struggles to comprehend the situation. A silver-haired man, Alexid, tells his companion that he questioned a woman named Claudine, who evasively said things just turned out a certain way. He observes that, as he expected, his companion was completely unaware of the situation. The companion, named El, rises from his seat and announces he is going to see Liliaj. Alexid offers to accompany him, stating that as Liliaj's husband, El has the right to know what happened. He will send an envoy to announce their arrival, as El confirms he has heard nothing. Surrounded by bookshelves, Elle wonders when Liliage began to prepare herself to go to the palace. He then agrees to Alexid's plan and thanks him. Elle questions the entire situation, finding it odd for Liliage to begin serving at the palace after her divorce was announced. He reflects that becoming an official conversation partner for the crown princess is no easy task, even for a member of a ducal family. A flashback reveals Elle's perspective, recalling his marriage was arranged when he was about to turn 17. It was a political union designed to strengthen relations with the neighboring country. He knew political marriages were common for nobles and that his own will had no part in it. While many mocked their marriage as child's play, he considered it a better fate than being wed to a much older woman. The arrangement dictated that Liliage would be raised in the fief by his mother. Elle, meanwhile, spent his time accompanying Crown Prince Nikolai on a study mission and later serving by his side, gaining experience in state affairs. He remembers that Liliage was scared during their first meeting. Later, when he asked if she had grown accustomed to life in Sapphire, she gave him a happy yes. After 3 years passed, she started to show him a warm, childlike smile. He recalls her telling him she learned to play the violin, and he warmly praised her for the amazing accomplishment. Her letters assured him that she was living happily under his mother's care, a fact that brought him a vicarious joy. He watched as she grew more beautiful and delicate with each year that passed. But now, in the present, he is completely lost. He looks across a room filled with people and wonders what is truly happening. Elle confronts the crown princess, demanding she explain why his wife, Liliage, is now serving as one of her ladies-in-waiting. The princess calmly corrects him, stating Liliage is not a lady-in-waiting. She explains that Duchess Brunel requested she host the girl in the palace to learn proper manners and conduct. As Liliage remains silent, the princess explains that after consulting with her mother-in-law, she decided to take Liliage in and asks if he finds this bothersome. Elle questions what his wife could possibly learn from the princess, while Alexid dryly notes that these are social life lessons up close. The princess points out that over the past few years, she has never seen Alexid take his wife to any social events. She then turns to Madame Garson for confirmation. Madame Garson confirms the princess's statement is accurate. The princess expresses her satisfaction that her memory served her correctly. Alexid realizes the conversation is being manipulated to go exactly the way the princess wants. He feels he must do something to intervene. The crown prince cuts in, asking the princess to clear the room so he can speak with her. He demands to know what the divorce means and why Liliage is suddenly at the palace. The princess casually replies that it is fine, as the other woman already knows everything. Elle, the crown prince, turns to Alexid and asks what the princess meant by everything. Alexid looks uneasy as Liliage sits quietly on a nearby sofa. Elle addresses Liliage directly, asking if her desire for a divorce is genuine. She meets his gaze and answers, yes. With a steady gaze, she once again confirms her wish for a divorce. Shocked, Elle can only say her name before asking what in the world she is thinking. He questions if she has forgotten that their marriage is a political alliance between their countries, Sapphire and Sergwa. Liliage explains that her mother-in-law sent a letter to Sergwa's royal family, who replied they have no issue with the divorce as long as she doesn't return to her homeland. She continues, clarifying that the monarchs saw this outcome as inevitable for a childhood marriage and gave their consent. Furthermore, she received the approval of Sapphire's royal family as well. He asks her desperately if she wants to get away from him that badly. She confirms all arrangements were made in advance through her mother-in-law's efforts. He then recalls her sudden coldness that began after a garden party one year. He remembers how after that event, she immediately went back to the fief with his mother. The letters that had once been frequent were reduced to simple seasonal greetings. Internally, he admits that he no longer knew how to approach or interact with the mature and beautiful woman Liliage had become. All he could do was act with hesitation and caution around her. He had been afraid to show his true desires as a man, fearing her rejection. He wanted to maintain her innocent image of him as a mature man to look up to. Liliage breaks his reverie, asking what he plans to do after they separate. His fear that she might hate him twisted his words, making his tone sound like an interrogation against his own will. Liliage reveals a new plan. His mother intends to adopt her into House Brunel as her daughter. She calls it an offer she wishes to accept to fulfill his mother's desire to see her as a bride before she dies. Elle explodes, asking if she plans to marry another man and declaring the idea unacceptable. He questions this talk of adoption and becoming a bride without any prior consultation with him. He demands to know why his mother is suddenly involved in their affairs as a married couple. He asks if their own wedding wasn't enough to satisfy his mother's wish to see her in a wedding dress. Liliage quietly states that his mother is upset and believes he is unworthy to be her husband. The accusation hits home, and Elle thinks to himself that she is right. He was the one who neglected her for so long. Liliage continues, saying his mother raised her with love and is as important to her as her real mother. The princess adds that she has always detected sadness in Liliage's eyes. Liliage muses that she often thought her life would be more peaceful if she married an honest man who would always remain by her side. Elle argues that agreeing to a divorce just because his mother wants it is absurd and that she should have considered him first. He claims a true consideration for him would not involve a divorce that would subject him to ridicule. Liliage counters that she arrived at this decision precisely because she did think about him. She insists she will take the blame herself. The princess, Claudine, tells Viscount Fawars to rest assured, as she will protect Liliage. When Elle demands to know her level of involvement, she claims she merely provided counsel when Duchess Brunel requested it. Liliage tells him it will be all right, as scandals can be managed. She explains that her mother-in-law arranged everything to officially prove their white marriage was unconsummated, which will help at the time of the divorce. She concludes by stating the divorce document will arrive soon from the Doctrine House, requiring only their information to be submitted. The news leaves both Elle and Alexid stunned. Alexid leaps up, demanding to know how they simply obtained a divorce document and how much it cost. Elle asks for confirmation that she truly has the document, and she says yes. The narrative explains that in their country of Sapphire, the prevailing religion forbids divorce, binding couples until death. In practice, however, a divorce document can be obtained for a sufficient price from the cardinal, though it is merely a facade. Alexid concedes that Elle was busy and left her alone, but feels this decision is too hasty and that he shares some of the blame. Liliage says her mother-in-law handled all the arrangements, the details of which she is unaware. Alexid grimly concludes a large sum of money was paid. Liliage acknowledges Elle's vital role alongside the crown prince, stating she is proud he is so indispensable to him. However, from this point forward, her role will change. She wants to support him as a younger sister. The suggestion stuns Elle. He slams his hands on the table and declares forcefully that he does not need a sister. His sudden outburst shocks them both into silence. His mind races with the fear of being rejected after 10 years of marriage. He lashes out, asking if she has considered how their divorce will be perceived by others now. He shouts at her not to bother him with such things. The words escape before he can stop himself, and he immediately feels a pang of regret. Liliage looks down, her expression wounded. He believes that every woman has the right to pursue her own happiness. He realizes his anger does not stem from hatred for her. The truth is that he has always wanted to touch her, to be close to her, but has never been able to act on it. 4 individuals are seated in a stark, tiled room, an uncomfortable silence hanging between the 2 pairs sitting on opposing couches. A woman holding an ornate fan breaks the quiet, acknowledging Viscount Fawars's talent but condemning the act of overlooking his faults to place blame on another, deeming it outrageous. A light-haired woman named Liliage then directly addresses a man, asking if he recalls that she was wed to him at the tender age of 8. The man, Elle, clenches his fist and affirms that he does remember, while an associate defends him, explaining that Elle is not naturally outgoing and his current turmoil makes his words seem harsh. The discussion intensifies as one man questions the appropriateness of a woman's interference, while she insists her concern for her friend is not unnecessary meddling in the affairs of the Duchy of Brunel. The woman with the fan argues that the real issue is another's constant presence alongside Alexio during his duties, but a man defends this as an unavoidable part of the job. A dark-haired woman declares her personal duty is to ensure Liliage obtains a safe and proper divorce, blaming Alexio's neglect on his stiff work environment. When a man objects that this is not her duty, she cuts him off with a sharp command to be silent. The woman feigns a sudden worsening of her health, claiming she cannot stand the sight of men and demanding they both depart immediately. She then invites Liliage to escape the men for some sweets, observing that their argument has morphed into a different kind of battle entirely. Liliage is urged to leave as the man named Elle watches them go. Elle calls out to Liliage as she looks back one last time before departing. She gives a hesitant agreement to leave, her gaze meeting Elle's troubled expression. With a final, smiling goodbye to Lord Alexid, she turns and walks away. Alexid stands frozen in the hall, utterly shocked that they are already planning to secure divorce papers. His companion remarks on the Duchess of Brunel's capability, noting that divorce is not a simple matter, while Alexid somberly concludes Liliage truly wants to leave him. The companion posits that the divorce may be more about satisfying Alexid's mother's wishes than Liliage's, revealing that his own mother had urged him to marry Liliage and is likely furious now. This suggestion sparks a look of dawning comprehension on Alexid's face. His friend laments that all the women have sided with Liliage, ruining what he hoped would be an opportunity for a calm discussion. He warns Elle that he is on the verge of losing her for good and must devise a new plan, as Elle cannot bear the thought of losing Liliage or seeing her with someone else. Resolved, Alexid declares he will not accept the divorce and will fight to the end, vowing never to surrender. His friend stands with him, promising to be by his side through the ordeal. 6 days later at the temple, a voice cries out in disbelief. Having received a letter, Liliage's mother-in-law rages against what she calls Alexid's cowardly move of petitioning the archbishop, convinced he orchestrated the entire situation. Liliage realizes the letter is from the archbishop himself, confirming her mother-in-law's suspicion that Alexid consulted him about the divorce, just as a servant arrives to escort them. The mother-in-law shares her bad feeling, noting the promised divorce papers never arrived and blaming her son for the delay as she leads Liliage onward. The two women wait anxiously in a grand, checkered-floor room. A knock heralds the arrival of Lord Alexid, whose presence visibly startles Liliage. Liliage is thrown into turmoil, unsure if it is appropriate to greet him politely given their recent conflict. Prince Nikolai appears, reassuring Alexid's companion that since Liliage has the powerful Duchess of Brunel as an ally, it is only fair that Alexid has support as well. The Duchess immediately confronts the prince, demanding to know if he is aware of why the divorce papers have not yet been delivered. Amidst the tension, Liliage reflects that she has missed her opportunity to greet her husband. The archbishop enters, asking if all are present, while Liliage inwardly decides she is no longer obligated to spare the feelings of the man she is about to divorce. He begins the proceedings by stating he called the meeting because Lord Alexid sought his counsel, claiming a divorce is being forced upon him without his consent. The Duchess of Brunel retorts that his consent is irrelevant after he neglected his wife and abandoned his duties for years, calling his current appeal pathetic. Alexid defends his past actions, explaining that since Liliage was only 8 when they married, he entrusted her to his mother for a proper upbringing rather than expecting her to be a wife. The Duchess dismisses his reasoning, shifting focus to his behavior after Liliage came of age, accusing him of failing to be a true husband by sending only a few letters a year while other girls were marrying. She laments that Liliage is now 18 and on the cusp of being labeled an old maid because of his inaction. Liliage remembers the moment she understood his true feelings, knowing that to have clung to him then would have only caused him more pain. Alexid admits his negligence but insists he now wants to face her properly, though the Duchess counters that his words are meaningless after he forbade their visit with a letter. He explains the letter was meant to protect her from a recent string of thefts targeting the wealthy in Sverige, but the Duchess scoffs at this as a flimsy, fabricated excuse. The archbishop claps his hands to restore order, requesting that they calm down and listen to what Liliage has to say. Liliage speaks, declaring that after 10 years of a marriage that was never real, it is time for both of them to consider their own separate futures. The Duchess supports this by presenting the archbishop with documents proving the marriage was purely formal, as Alexid accepts full responsibility for their lack of communication and expresses his regret. He pleads for a chance to fix his mistakes, asking them not to rush to divorce as the solution. Liliage directly asks if he has a genuine reason for refusing the divorce, questioning his vague offer to fix things. Her mother-in-law explodes, calling Alexid shameless for speaking of fixing things after so much time has passed. A temple official warns the Duchess to be calm, but she presses on, desperate for the divorce to happen immediately so Liliage's best years don't slip away. As Alexid begins to state his intention to properly fulfill his duties as a husband, the Duchess's fan breaks in her grip. Liliage quietly repeats his word, duty, prompting Alexid to realize his poor choice of words as another person dismisses the need for excuses. Alexid rises from his seat and strides toward Liliage, calling her name to get her full attention. He hastily clarifies that duty was the wrong word, explaining he had prepared something to show his sincere desire to speak with her. He presents a small gift box, revealing it as her birthday gift, a brooch he meant to give her at dinner. He expresses his hope that she will accept it, as he chose it thinking it would look beautiful on her. Liliage is completely taken aback, touched that Lord Alexid has a personal gift for her. Her mind flashes back to a childhood of receiving only teddy bears for her birthday, making this gesture feel unbelievable. Alexid holds the box, focused on the fact that this year he chose a brooch specifically for her. As she accepts the gift, her heart begins to pound, and she wonders how something so simple can fill her with such joy. She recalls him once deeming her a burden, a memory that clashes with her current feelings. Despite the past hurt, she cannot stop the frantic racing of her heart. Liliage opens a gift box, her happiness apparent, while her mother-in-law expresses skepticism about the contents, remembering the man's odd habit of sending teddy bears annually. Alexid questions the timing of the gift, suggesting the story behind it is a fabrication for Liliage's birthday, but he is immediately countered with evidence: a jeweler's visit log and purchase records. Liliage confirms the gift was bought before her birthday, and her mother-in-law adds that the ledgers were borrowed, making the dates irrefutable. Clutching the box, Liliage looks up, her expression a mixture of surprise and a faint blush. She quietly wonders if it is possible that Lord Alexid truly prepared this gift specifically for her. A memory surfaces of Alexid telling her he had searched a great deal to find something that would perfectly match the color of her eyes. Her thoughts darken as she recalls their marriage was forced by the state and that she had even heard him call her a burden, causing her to hesitate. A man of the cloth informs Liliage that her husband has reflected on his past behavior and is resolved to change. He then asks her directly if she can find it in her heart to give Alexid a single chance, leaving her utterly speechless. She gazes at the brooch, feeling it represents his genuine feelings, which stands in stark contrast to his recent claim that the gift was merely a fulfillment of duty. Despite the conflicting evidence, her resolve to end their vague and painful attachment remains, and she decides she must still proceed with the divorce. With a sad smile, Liliage apologizes to her mother-in-law for using her as an excuse, explaining her true wish was for her mother-in-law to see her in a wedding dress. Alexid is taken aback, asking in disbelief if she is truly choosing his mother over him, to which she simply affirms. She explains her desire to build a peaceful family, acknowledging that it's normal for a husband to be away from home for work. However, she finishes by stating that for him to return to his wife only a few times a year is profoundly sad, a statement that visibly strikes Alexid. He vows to do his best from now on, but Liliage silently dismisses the promise, recalling an old saying about the emptiness of that phrase and focusing only on her desire for him to agree to the divorce. With a serene but firm smile, she tells him that ending their relationship cleanly and clearly is what is best for both of them. She then announces her plan to accept his mother as her own while also intending to marry another man, which horrifies Alexid as he realizes she would effectively become his adopted sister. Overwhelmed, Alexid bows his head low, his voice pleading for just one more chance. He confesses that his previous harsh words did not come from his heart and were simply a result of him expressing himself poorly. Liliage urges him to lift his head, telling him it's fine and that he should mind his reputation, though internally she feels his apology changes nothing. The clergyman presiding over the meeting observes that their discussion has become circular and declares it's time to conclude since both have stated their positions. He then shifts the topic, remarking that he has long been troubled by a recent trend. He voices his serious reservations about the ease with which divorces are granted, especially those finalized with a simple donation, calling it a mockery of vows made before God and noting the bothersome actions of a certain Cardinal Herdu. Holding a sealed letter, he mentions that he also received a message from Cardinal Calvano urging him to be prudent, which prompts Alexid's mother to question its relevance to their situation. The white-haired man, Nikolai, clarifies that he consulted the devout Cardinal Calvano only on the proper procedure for a divorce, leading the mother-in-law to understand his strategy. Nikolai then confronts his mother directly, pointing out that Cardinal Herdu is notorious for granting documents in exchange for money and demands to know how much she paid. She claims the money came from her personal purse as a donation for church construction and that no one can object, but Nikolai presses, asking if the funds actually came from the duchy's treasury. The clergyman cuts in, stating that regardless of the proceedings, it is clear that Lord Alexid, as the husband, sincerely wishes to reconcile with his wife honestly. He then turns his attention to a stunned Liliage, asking if she would be willing to spare a little time for her husband. Announcing his decision, he declares that the divorce will be postponed, reasoning that since Liliage's life is not in danger and her husband desires to bridge the gap between them, a period of reconciliation is warranted. The sudden verdict sends a wave of shock through Liliage, Alexid, his mother, and Nikolai. The clergyman prepares to outline the specific terms of his binding agreement for the couple. He dictates that for 1 year, both parties must work toward mutual understanding, with mandatory progress interviews every 3 months, after which the possibility of divorce will be revisited. Liliage is inwardly reeling, having expected a simple, amicable divorce but instead receiving a one-year postponement, yet deep down, she feels a surprising sense of relief. She accepts that their relationship is unlikely to change in a year and that her hidden feelings will probably remain unfulfilled. Nevertheless, a quiet sense of peace settles over her at the thought of being able to stay with Lord Elexid for just a little while longer. Elexid meets her gaze, softly asking her to please rely on him. Several days later, Liliage recounts the events to another woman, Claudine, who is astonished to learn of the one-year divorce postponement, an outcome Liliage admits she never anticipated. Liliage reveals she received a letter from Elexid in which he apologized for his past lack of sincerity and invited her for a walk to spend time together. However, she tells Claudine that she declined the offer, explaining that she has only just arrived at the palace and is preoccupied with practicing violin for an upcoming concert, feeling it's too sudden to accept. Claudine expresses her understanding and offers her support, telling Liliage to come to her directly if Elexid becomes forceful, before they decide to begin their music practice immediately. A servant interrupts to announce that Nikolai wishes to see Claudine, who curtly refuses, but Nikolai enters the room anyway with Elexid in tow, greeting her cheerfully. Claudine immediately accuses Nikolai of being a deceptive actor, claiming he only brought Elexid because his true target was always Liliage. Nikolai casually explains that since Elexid had been turned away at her door for 4 consecutive days, he felt it was time for him to intervene. Liliage is taken aback by this revelation, realizing with confusion that Lord Elexid may have been trying to visit her repeatedly over the last few days. Nikolai continues to playfully pester a protesting Claudine to take a break, suggesting a walk in the garden or a visit to see the children. After some back and forth, Claudine relents, agreeing to go but insisting that a maid stay behind so Liliage and Elexid are not left completely alone. Now alone with her, Elexid comments on the fact that she is still playing the violin and notes how long it has been since they spoke privately, making Liliage nervous as she recalls how he always used to attend the princess's summer concerts. He smiles and promises that if she is going to perform on stage, he will be sure to attend the concert. Liliage becomes flustered, internally dismissing his promise as nothing more than a polite gesture required by their divorce postponement period. She steers the conversation back to his invitation letter, bluntly stating that she is busy and must reject it, though Elexid insists a walk would be a good experience for them. She elaborates on her packed schedule since arriving at the palace, explaining that she barely has enough time for herself, let alone for lunch. Seizing the opportunity, Elexid's expression softens as he asks if, given her lack of time, she would be willing to dedicate her lunchtime to him. His direct and unexpected question leaves Liliage utterly speechless, her eyes swirling in shock. As she stammers that even her lunchtime isn't always free, he leans in closer, playfully asking if he needs to make a reservation to see her. He makes the decision for her, declaring they will have lunch together in 2 days and that he will personally come to pick her up. With a confident smile, he says he is looking forward to it, leaving a blushing Liliage to protest that this aggressive approach is not what she wanted at all. 2 days after their last encounter, Lord Elexid approaches Liliage with a welcoming gesture. Liliage formally returns the greeting to Lord Elexid. She internally prepares herself for their scheduled lunch, resolving that she will not run away from this meeting. Elexid immediately compliments her dress, noting that it suits her well today, which visibly startles the young woman. He continues by saying that calm colors suit her very much, leaving her to wonder if this is truly the famously indifferent Lord Elexid she thought she knew. She offers her thanks, admitting she thought the look might be a little childish but is happy for the praise, all the while recalling how he had hardly even looked at her over the past 2 years during the meeting the Archbishop had arranged. Despite her gratitude, she internally strengthens her resolve, promising herself she will not be easily swayed or softened by his sudden attention. As they sit at an outdoor table, Elexid remarks that he's glad the weather is sunny, which makes Liliage privately think that even the elements are on his side as she challenges him in her mind to try and win her favor. He then asks about her life at the palace and if she is lacking anything, urging her not to hesitate to tell him, but she assures him she is fine since her mother-in-law prepared everything she could need and even arranged for a familiar maid from her home to join her. Elexid gently insists that there must still be things she is not used to, reiterating that she can speak to him anytime she needs something. Liliage thanks him again, acknowledging that everything is new to her but she finds joy in the experience and has found Princess Claudine to be very kind. She goes on to explain that she is learning the names of the palace staff and was surprised to discover the different ranks among maids, from upper-class maids of high-status families like herself to regular maids from lower noble or merchant families. The memory of Alexid's earlier compliment about her dress still causes a flutter of surprise. His follow-up statement that calm colors are very suitable for her continues to make her question if this is the same man known for being indifferent. Her memory flashes back to her own thoughts just moments before, where she thanked him for the praise while remembering his past neglect during the meeting set up by the Archbishop. Even so, she reaffirms her decision not to let her guard down or be easily won over. The pleasant weather, which he commented on, feels like another factor working in his favor, yet she inwardly dares him to do what he can to earn her good graces. He had asked about her life in the palace, and she had replied that she was quite comfortable, thanks to the thorough preparations of her mother-in-law. His gentle persistence that she must still be getting used to things and could talk to him about anything echoed his newfound attentiveness. In response, Liliage had expressed her gratitude, mentioning the kindness of Princess Claudine and the joy she was finding in her new life. She had even shared what she was learning about her duties and the ranks of maids within the palace, showing her diligence. With a bright smile, she declares her intention to work hard to become useful to Princess Claudine as quickly as possible. The arrival of their food interrupts her thoughts, and she briefly worries that she has appeared childish once more. She changes the subject, mentioning that she wanted to take this chance to explore the palace, observing how busy it is with people coming and going. Alexid explains that this particular administrative wing is full of men because it's designated for political and state affairs, gently suggesting it might not be a very enjoyable place for her to visit. Liliage clarifies that her desire to see it isn't about fun but about knowing the palace better, though she then privately frets that she has bored him and he's lost interest. Feeling she has become a burden and is getting in the way of his work, she quickly backtracks, dismissing her own words as the mere ramblings of a young girl. At that moment, the server presents a plate of grilled lamb with herbs, a dish that she immediately recognizes as her absolute favorite. The first bite is heavenly, and she feels her spirits lift instantly, thinking that delicious food truly heals the soul. When Alexid asks if she likes it, she answers with honest enthusiasm, even as she chides herself for being so easily pleased by a single dish. Her honest answer brings a pleased smile to his face as he says, "Thank goodness." Seeing him smile so naturally causes her to wonder, as it reminds her of their childhood when they would eat together, happy just to be in each other's company. The warm memory, however, gives way to the somber truth of their current situation. Her demeanor shifts as she puts down her utensils, her mind filled with the thought that he must consider this entire divorce delay period a farce. Her sudden change prompts a concerned Alexid to ask what's wrong. He tries to deduce the reason for her silence, recalling that while she likes lamb, she hates mushrooms, and he assures her that the dish was prepared without them. Stunned that he knew this, she asks how, and he explains that she told him in a letter she wrote a long time ago. Deeply embarrassed that he would remember such a trivial detail from so long ago, even recalling how her mother used to scold her for it, she inwardly screams for him to forget he ever heard it. He adds that if a dish ever contains mushrooms, he will eat them for her, but she thinks that's not the issue at all and decides she needs to say something to embarrass him for a change. She searches her own memories, remembering from one of his old letters that he himself was not fond of lamb, and she wonders if he ordered it just to match her meal. She tests her theory by asking what his favorite food is, and he answers that he prefers beef and also likes chicken liver. It is the first time she's ever heard this, and it dawns on her that it's not just food, she still barely knows anything about him at all. Before she can dwell on this, a waiter arrives presenting their dessert, a sight that makes her gasp in delight. It's a strawberry dessert, another one of her favorite things, and she feels incredibly simple for being so happy that every dish served has been something she loves. She takes a bite and her face lights up with pure, simple joy at how delicious it is. Alexid watches her reaction with a gentle expression, quietly saying that he sees and that it's good. His intent gaze makes her blush, and she tells herself to focus on her dessert, realizing that once it is finished, their meeting for the day will be over. She notices his dessert is not the same as hers and, wondering if he dislikes strawberries, she impulsively asks if he would like to have hers as well. Realizing how that sounded, she quickly states that she is not actually that greedy. He teases her gently, remarking that he remembers a time when she would eat everything without hesitation, which prompts her to retort that he should stop treating her like a child. His soft reply, that she is no longer a child but a refined and wonderful lady, leaves her utterly stunned. Her mind races, questioning why he would say something like that all of a sudden when she was sure he had only ever seen her as a child. In her flustered state, she holds her dessert out towards him, nonsensically declaring that if he really wants her to, she will eat it for his sake. She then quickly tries to end the awkward moment by apologizing for taking up his precious time. As they conclude their lunch, she thanks him for the delicious meal, and he proposes they do it again sometime, an offer she accepts with definite enthusiasm. Walking away, she reflects that she was able to speak with him naturally, a stark contrast to their last heavy and awkward dinner, and the fact that all the food was her favorite makes her look forward to their next meeting. She immediately cuts off that line of thought, reminding herself that she must not get carried away. These meetings are only to facilitate a smooth divorce and to avoid inconveniencing his mother and the archbishop. Still, she realizes she agreed to another meeting without a second thought and seems to follow his lead without even realizing it, as evidenced when he suggests a stroll around Spheri next time, and she readily agrees. It's fine, she tells herself, whether it's a stroll or anything else, she will handle it well, because this is all for the purpose of ensuring a smooth divorce. But his kind words, calling her name, asking if she liked the food, his sigh of relief, keep replaying in her mind as she struggles to hold herself together. She desperately tries to calm her flustered heart and mind. In the end, however, she cannot help but admit to herself that she is, just a little, looking forward to seeing him again. As spring arrives with blooming flowers, a voice off-panel asks if everything has been remembered before a departure. Lady Carson sees Liliage off, acknowledging that she will be spending the day touring the capital city of Spheri with Viscount Fawars and encouraging her to enjoy the capital's beauty. Another woman responds that it's fine, as it was a firm request from the Viscount, and urges her companion to hurry along because he is waiting. As she walks away, Lady Carson mutters that humans are complicated creatures and that not everything said reflects the truth, which a concerned Liliage overhears, wondering what was just said. Liliage tries to dismiss the comment as her imagination as she waits, wondering why Lord Alexid has not arrived yet and realizing this is the first time they will be going out together, just the two of them. She recalls being so nervous the previous night that she couldn't sleep, insisting to herself it was not from excitement, but rather a consequence of unthinkingly accepting his invitation for a walk in Spheri. To manage her feelings, she decides to reframe the outing in her mind, thinking of him as nothing more than a tour guide for the day, and perhaps even as a walking wallet. Just then, Lord Alexid arrives, looking dashing amidst a backdrop of flowers, and asks if he has kept her waiting long. He compliments her as always, telling her she looks lovely, and she replies that she just got there. As they walk to the waiting carriage, she internally remarks that his constant compliments seem to hide more than they show regarding their delayed divorce. The carriage ride offers a view of the impressive city architecture. Liliage is struck by the beauty and spaciousness of the city, admitting to Lord Alexid that since she'd always gone straight to the royal palace or spent her time with her mother-in-law, she never had a chance to realize how beautiful Spheri truly is. As they stand in a large square, Lord Alexid explains that it was built about 150 years ago when the capital was moved and that it originally served as a departure and return point for military formations. He then directs her attention toward a large, prominent statue of a hero standing atop a clock tower. He continues his explanation, telling her the statue was built 70 years ago to commemorate the king's victory in a war and that the sight of military parades, which are still held there, is truly amazing. Liliage is deeply impressed by his knowledge, reflecting that while she had studied the kingdom's history, seeing the places for herself and hearing his clear explanations gives the subject a whole new depth. She tells him he is very knowledgeable and that she was listening in awe, suggesting he could work as a tour guide right away. Her compliment seems to have the opposite effect, as he looks downtrodden and apologizes for having rambled on alone. Seeing his reaction, Liliage worries that calling him a tour guide might have been rude and quickly tries to correct herself, explaining she meant his tour was so clear it was like receiving a private history lesson. She doubles down on the praise, adding that she was so impressed with his knowledge that she thinks he could become a university professor at any moment. He lets out a laugh and thanks her, much to Liliage's relief, who is glad she didn't upset him after all. He announces their next destination is Marana Cathedral, while Liliage inwardly contemplates the complex nature of men's feelings and how she needs to learn more about them. She feels her own face growing hot and wonders if it has turned red. Reflecting on a moment when they held hands, she hopes he didn't feel her heart beating rapidly through his touch. They arrive at a grand and beautiful building, both admiring its impressive size. A promoter in a clown costume hands Liliage a flyer for a play at the Don Pierre Theatre, telling her it's a romantic drama about a famous thief in Spheri that she won't want to miss. Liliage wonders what kind of play would feature a thief as the hero, while Lord Elexid privately marvels at the Don Pierre troupe's skill in capitalizing on current events, questioning how they will portray a thief whose identity remains a mystery. She asks aloud if thefts have become a trend in Spheri, prompting Lord Elexid to call her name sharply and warn her not to wander off without permission in the crowded street. She then asks if he knows anything about this thief, noticing that he looks somewhat flustered by her question as she reads the flyer's title aloud. He confirms the thief is a real criminal currently causing a public stir and reveals this was the reason he hesitated to let her come to the capital, before suggesting they take a break at a nearby cafe. At the cafe, Liliage is presented with a beautiful plate of stacked crepes that makes her eyes go wide. She eats with delight, thinking to herself that the sweetness of the strawberries has wiped away all of her fatigue. She catches herself, however, and resolves to stay composed, determined not to be fooled by her feelings getting carried away like last time. While trying to calm herself by sipping her tea, she turns to Lord Elexid and asks him to please tell her more about the great thief. He obliges, explaining that the thief has been stirring up trouble in Spheri for several months, claiming responsibility after each theft by sending a statement to the newspapers and always leaving the same type of card at the victim's home. Liliage wonders about the point of it all, and he replies that no one knows, but there seems to be a pattern, as all the victims so far have been wealthy families, though nothing is confirmed. She asks if they are all nobles, but he clarifies the noble title has nothing to do with it. The common factor among the victims, who include nobles, military officers, and merchants, is simply wealth. Liliage finds this detail to be very strange, and seeing her reaction, Lord Elexid decides it's best to end the conversation there. He apologizes, acknowledging it's not the best topic to discuss over tea and sweets, and shifts the conversation by asking how she has found Spheri today. She replies that she really enjoyed it, as the city is beautiful and she realized there is still so much she doesn't know about it. He then asks if she has ever visited the old capital, Maribon, explaining it is only an hour away by horseback and that many important nobles still live there. He adds that it remains a popular summer destination for the upper class and hosts opera performances and concerts, which causes Liliage to silently wonder if he has gone there with someone else besides her. She quickly chastises herself for the thought, but her momentary distraction causes him to call her name, Lily, in concern. He calls her Liliage, and points out that she has some cream on her face before reaching out a hand toward her. He leans in closely, his hand gently holding her jaw as they gaze at one another. His finger deftly wipes the cream from her cheek as she looks on in surprise. He then brings his finger to his own mouth, tasting the cream he had just wiped from her face. Liliage is completely flustered, crying out and demanding to know what he is doing, while he calmly explains that there was some cream on her cheek. She wonders how he can act so casually while her own heart is pounding, but he simply asks if he bothered her. She accuses him of being used to this kind of thing from attending operas and concerts in the old capital with lots of ladies, but he firmly denies it, stating he has never done anything like that with any woman but her and that his visits were strictly for work. He explains that for the past few years, he has dedicated himself to his work as His Highness's assistant to gain experience in governance, and even when he had to attend social events, he would only offer his greetings and leave immediately. She tells him he doesn't need to make excuses to her, but he grips his own arm and insists that they are not excuses. Looking at her with great intensity, he says he just wants her to know the truth and that he does not need anyone else but her. His sudden and earnest confession makes her blush deeply as she wonders why she is the only one who gets so affected like this, feeling that the situation is incredibly unfair. She deflects by calling him a silver-tongued man, just like someone older and wiser, a comment which makes him visibly wince as he admits that being called older stings a little. As they leave the cafe and she descends the stairs, he tells her to be careful, and she thinks to herself, if only. She internally reflects that if he had only treated their relationship like a mere duty or a cold responsibility, perhaps she could have kept her composure, but she knows that ultimately, they are just a couple who will separate eventually. A few days after a tour of Spheri, Liliage attends a meeting for an upcoming tea party hosted by Princess Claudine, where a menu of popular Spheri desserts is being discussed. Lady Garson, the head of the palace maids, leads the discussion, transitioning from the sequence of serving refreshments to the hall decorations, as Liliage vows to learn from this experience for her future as a homemaker. As the group considers the party's ambience, with suggestions of mimosa flowers for decor and unified dish designs, Liliage feels a growing sense of nervousness. When Lady Fawars is asked her opinion on table decorations, she feels the exhaustion of organizing such a grand event, which is far larger than the tea parties her mother-in-law used to host. The meeting concludes with a hope for everyone's cooperation on the day of the party. Afterwards, a maid consults Lady Fawars about the quantity of a certain cake to prepare, and Liliage confirms the number, instructing her to inform the kitchen. Liliage reflects on her duties, as her status as both foreign royalty and part of a ducal house has led to her being entrusted with helping to oversee the kitchen on the day of the event. She is determined to perform her job perfectly to ensure the party's success when someone calls her name. Princess Claudine appears and expresses her gladness at finding Liliage, inviting her along to see her children. While they walk together, the princess asks how the tea party preparations are progressing. Liliage reports that they focused on trendy sweets from Spheri, describing a lemon-flavored cake with ulia liqueur and a multicolored sugar coating over a soft sponge. Sensing Liliage's feeling of being overwhelmed by the many decisions, Princess Claudine reassures her that it will become easier and that she too will one day host parties in her own palace. Liliage looks upon Princess Claudine as an older sister, recalling that the princess also married Prince Nikolai at the young age of 16. She reflects that the princess is now a mother to 2 children. A young child's voice suddenly calls out for her, "Mama?" A little girl runs with great energy into Princess Claudine's embrace, delighting the onlookers who mention she was imitating her mother that very morning. The princess lovingly greets her beautiful little girl, who confirms that she has been good. Liliage watches them and thinks how, despite their similar ages, Princess Claudine's face is completely filled with the features of motherhood. This causes her to wonder if she will have a child of her own one day. And as she ponders this, she questions who the father of that child might be. The thought lingers in her mind. She is suddenly flustered when Lord Al-Exid's face comes to her, an idea she immediately rejects as not right. She firmly reminds herself that her plan is to divorce him and have a child with someone else entirely. Princess Claudine notices her distraction, but Liliage insists she was merely lost in thought. Then, the day of the tea party arrives. In the bustling kitchen, Lady Garson instructs Lady Fawars to oversee the staff there while she goes to inspect the hall, reminding her to ensure there are enough dishes for everyone. Their conversation is interrupted when a maid rushes toward them announcing a problem. The maid explains that the number of prepared desserts is less than what is needed. Lady Garson demands to know who gave the kitchen the order, especially since the ladies requested extra of the trendy Spheri desserts, and her sharp gaze falls on a young, nervous maid. As the maid stammers, unable to answer, Liliage realizes with a jolt that she was the one who gave the instructions. Stepping forward, she calls to Lady Garson and offers a sincere apology. Liliage takes full responsibility for the error, stating clearly that she was the one who gave the instructions to the maid. She explains that she accidentally confused the quantity of that dessert with another type and feels it is unacceptable to let the maid be blamed for her own slip-up. Lady Garson looks at her and lets out a weary sigh. Liliage turns to the young maid and apologizes for causing trouble, frustrated with herself for making such a basic mistake and unsure of what to do now. She realizes the maid must have been hesitant to question an order from someone of higher status, which explains her earlier confusion when she was questioned. The thought that she made the young woman feel cautious and embarrassed weighs on her. She turns back to Lady Garson and apologizes once more. Lady Garson dismisses the visibly relieved maid, who quickly bows and departs. As Liliage bows low in apology, Lady Garson tells Lady Fawars to lift her head. Lady Garson says that what's done is done and that their focus now must be on finding a solution. A wave of panic washes over Liliage as she desperately tries to think of a way to fix the situation, but her mind is blank. Lady Garson recalls that another type of dessert was accidentally overprepared, proposing they use that quantity instead and distribute any leftovers to the maids and servants. Overwhelmed with guilt, Liliage begins to cry and apologize, but Lady Garson firmly tells her not to. The head maid watches the distraught Liliage. Lady Garson warns her that crying will cause her eyes to swell right before she is to attend a tea party alongside Princess Claudine. She reminds Liliage of her duty as a high-ranking lady-in-waiting to ensure the event is a success, telling her to postpone any tears until after the party has ended peacefully. Cupping Liliage's face in her hands, she insists they won't be able to conclude things smoothly if she continues to wear such a sad expression. The young maid who was dismissed moments before is startled by the scene, while Liliage thinks that she deserved a harsher scolding for her mistake. Suddenly, the young maid has an idea, proposing to Lady Garson that they transform the insufficient cakes into a new dessert by cutting them into smaller pieces, soaking them in syrup, and chilling them. Liliage recognizes the concept from a past gathering, and the maid enthusiastically explains that serving it in small glass dishes would create a refreshing, new sphery style, perfect for welcoming the coming summer. Lady Garson immediately grasps that cutting the cakes into small pieces will ensure there is enough to serve everyone. With no time to lose, she takes command, instructing all the maids to divide the tasks and begin at once. Liliage watches in amazement, impressed by Lady Garson's ability to coordinate so many people and instantly create a new plan. The kitchen staff moves with purpose to execute the new dessert plan. Lady Garson tells Liliage that everything is now under control and that she must go get ready for what will be her official debut before many of the kingdom's noble ladies. Clenching the fabric of her dress, Liliage agrees. Before leaving, she approaches the young maid to thank her for saving the situation with her quick thinking. The maid smiles graciously, insisting there is no need for thanks as she was simply performing her duty. With a respectful bow, the maid returns to her work. Left alone for a moment, Liliage looks out at the castle and feels a sense of inadequacy, believing she is still not good enough. Her solitary reflection is broken by a man's voice calling her name from down a sunlit corridor. A young woman sits alone on a bench, letting out a weary sigh. She reflects on her failure at the tea party, a forced smile being all she could manage as she feels utterly helpless. She had apologized to Princess Claudine, who had comforted her and dismissed the mistake as something common for a first-timer. But the kindness did little to soothe her shame, making her feel so helpless she wishes she could just disappear. Suddenly, a man's voice calls out, and she looks up in shock to see him. Tears welling in her eyes, she recognizes him as Lord Elexid. He approaches her on the bench and asks what is wrong, and she panics internally, embarrassed to be seen in such a tearful state. He thanks her for her hard work at the tea party, but she silently begs for him not to notice her distress. His kind words only confuse her, and she asks him to stop, questioning if this is part of some plan. She suspects he is trying to take advantage of the situation in a clever way. She directly asks if he was sent to check on her by Lady Carson. He seems taken aback, clarifying that he didn't come just because Lady Carson asked him to. He explains he came because he knew the day was important to her and had already decided he wanted to see her, then asks if he may sit down. She quietly agrees, allowing him to approach the bench. He sits beside her, and a moment of silence passes before she asks why he is there. She continues to question him, wondering why he won't say anything. She starts to explain her situation, mentioning that Lady Carson wasn't harsh with her despite her failure. Her thoughts spiral into a desperate need for someone, anyone, to listen as she pours out her regret and pain. Clenching her dress, she finally speaks of Lady Carson to him. He reassures her that Lady Carson understands her regret and that there's no need to blame someone who feels true remorse, advising her to focus on turning the mistake into a step forward. He asks if she understands, and she agrees that he is right. She confesses that the true source of her pain is being forgiven simply because it was her first attempt, wishing she had been scolded more so she might have felt she got what she deserved. The lack of consequence only makes the failure feel more bitter. She hates herself for the mistake she made. In response to her confession, he gently places a hand on her head. She looks up at him, surprised by the gesture. He simply looks back at her with a calm expression. A fresh wave of emotion washes over her at his touch. She looks up at him, flustered and blushing, asking why he is being so kind to her as he calls her by her name, Liliage. She pulls away slightly, insisting she is not a child anymore and doesn't want that kind of consolation. Though she tells him to stop, a part of her secretly wishes he would continue patting her head just a little longer. He tells her plainly that she is his wife, and when he sees her crying alone, he wants to comfort her. She denies crying, and he observes that she is strong, remarking that she has grown up without him even realizing it. She retorts that he only just noticed she's a grown woman now, while he affirms that she has truly become a lovely young lady. She questions if calling her lovely is just another way of treating her like a child as he pats her head again. Despite her words, she closes her eyes and leans into his warm touch. She silently wishes for the comforting gesture to last just a little longer. After a moment, her embarrassment returns and she suddenly protests, asking how long he plans to keep patting her head, causing him to apologize in surprise. She remarks that her mother-in-law was right about the men in the royal court being good at sweet talk, but he insists he isn't one to flatter. A quiet moment passes between them on the bench. To change the subject, he asks what the conversation at the tea party was about, not wanting her to only remember the sad parts. She explains they discussed fashion trends for the season and also the infamous thief who has become a common topic among the ladies. She elaborates that the most popular topic this year is a handsome and talented violinist who will be performing at a concert in Maribon. It seems the ladies of high society enjoy discovering and supporting new artists, feeling proud when they become famous. A lady who had actually heard the violinist play was surrounded by an eager crowd, all wanting to hear about him. That lady described his soft, feminine features, his warm smile, and an enchanting voice that makes anyone who hears it melt. Liliage admits that as a salon host, it is her duty to stay informed on these popular topics that provide engaging discussion. He listens and smiles, observing that she had a day full of useful conversations and information. She agrees, though she admits that while everyone else had much to say, she was mostly just listening. But she views it as a wonderful learning experience, understanding that a salon host must entertain guests by offering topics for discussion. The experience made her realize how much she still doesn't know and that she must put in more effort. With newfound resolve, she decides there is no point in drowning in sorrow any longer. He watches her, a thoughtful expression on his face. He stands up, announcing that he has to go now, and she expresses her surprise at how quickly the time flew by. He invites her to have dinner together later, but she declines, explaining she is too exhausted from the day. He accepts her refusal and says he will message her soon to plan a time to eat together, wishing her a restful night. As he walks away, she suggests he should spend time with his mother instead, adding that the woman really likes him despite her stubborn nature. He thinks about his mother, who he feels only ever seems to hate him, though Liliage insists she just doesn't know how to be honest. Since his mother is in the royal capital, Liliage encourages him to spend more time with her, and he reluctantly agrees. She calls out to thank him for his time today as he begins to walk off. He turns back with a small smile, saying he didn't do anything at all and telling her to take care of herself. As she watches him leave, her thoughts return to the day's conversation, specifically the most talked about person of the year, the violinist. A horse-drawn carriage pulls up before a large, multi-story building. Inside, a well-dressed man sits hunched over, sighing that he has made a mistake yet again. He recounts being told Liliage was deeply depressed over a mistake, and when he went to see her on what was supposed to be an important day, his attempt to pat her head was met with anger for treating her like a child. He had seen her slender shoulders trembling with sorrow as she tried to hold herself together, which prompted his failed gesture of comfort. He reflects that a man more adept in these situations might have offered a kiss or an embrace, but he feels he is not that kind of man, having left her alone for 2 years. He feels a sense of guilt that prevents him from getting closer to her. He concludes that in the end he is nothing more than a private tutor to the woman he loves, unable to even offer a simple kiss. He feels disheartened, believing that to Liliage he is just a tutor, or as she once corrected, a boring and stiff university professor. Despite the waiting period for their divorce being underway, he resolves to do his best to make her see him as a man and not just a tutor. He enters a lavish room where a woman holding a fan expresses her surprise at his arrival. He remarks that this is his house too and admits he is reflecting on his past mistakes, acknowledging he should have paid more attention to his family, which the woman scoffs at, reminding him he insisted on living alone in his own mansion. He concedes that when it comes to family he often says foolish things, and then asks if Liliage made it through her tea party safely. The woman, his mother, says the news reached her quickly, perhaps from a friend who attended, and she expresses her own regret, feeling she has wronged Liliage by not sending her to Spheri alone. She continues that she couldn't bear the thought of Liliage being lonely there. She wonders aloud if he would have spent time with Liliage had she come to Spheri alone. He says he is not good with what-ifs, and admits he likely would have avoided her out of fear she would hate him, which led to her drifting away. His mother confesses that because she loved Lily so much, she clung to her too tightly, even saying the wrong thing and letting her down during a meeting with the archbishop. He asks if that is why she placed Liliage in Princess Claudine's care, and she explains that Liliage needs friends in this country to support her, as she cannot stay by her side forever. He realizes that his mother was also confused and hurting in her own way. He thinks about how his mother was always physically weak and had dreamed of a daughter, so she was overjoyed at his marriage to Liliage and eagerly prepared to welcome her, a love so deep he never hesitated to entrust Liliage to her care, never imagining their bond would grow so strong. His mother asks if this is what it feels like when a daughter leaves the nest, but he corrects her, stating that Liliage is his wife and belongs to House Brunel, so it is not a true departure. She dismisses his words, saying she doesn't trust him and won't be disappointed further, adding that all she wants is to see Liliej in a wedding dress and to see her grandchild's face, things he could make happen quickly. He tries to explain his words were just a reflection on whether different choices would have led to a different result, but she points out he just admitted to making mistakes. She tells him that he ignored Liliej the whole time, which is why she lost hope in him, and that is all there is to it, while he states he is now doing his utmost to fix what he ruined. She then produces a document, startling him as he asks what it is. He realizes with shock that it is a divorce certificate. She tells him there is no need to wait a whole year, as she can have them divorced at any time. He asks when she got it, and she cryptically explains that Cardinal Herdu's envoy was delayed, asking who he thinks is behind that. She states that while she respected Prince Nikolai's status and the Archbishop's reputation, she could separate them at any moment if she wanted to. He counters that his signature is necessary for such a decision, but she brushes it off as a trivial matter that can be easily handled. He reflects on Liliej's recent behavior, noticing she has been expressing her feelings more openly than before. He feels that although he found her past attempts to act mature adorable, her current openness makes him feel closer to her, and he hopes for a chance to bridge the gap and make it up to her. He silently asks for just a little more time to mend their relationship. He tells his mother he will see her later, but she stops him, asking how long he plans to stay in someone else's room, and tells him to let her have peace until dinner, which they will have together. His mother watches him leave, acknowledging to herself that Liliej only agreed to the divorce out of respect for her feelings. A few days later, a woman tells Liliej that it has been nearly 3 months and her meeting with the Archbishop is approaching, making her feel anxious about the outcome. Liliej believes it is merely a progress check and a duty to Alexid, but the woman, Princess Claudine, notes that Alexid has been paying her a lot of attention lately, calling Liliej harsh. Claudine explains that since their marriage was political, there was no room for choice, and it's essential to know a man's true intentions after he's caught the fish. Liliej replies that she doesn't ask much of Lord Alexid, because it is simpler that way. She explains that Lord Alexid is the eldest son of Duke Brunel and must produce an heir, so if they divorce, he will be required to find a new wife, and she believes he only wants to stay with her to avoid that trouble. The thought continues as she imagines having to interact with his new wife. Princess Claudine observes her silently. Elsewhere, the Duchess notes that Nikolai seems to be spending more time with the family and has even encouraged Alexid to take breaks, asking her to cooperate. Claudine brings up the upcoming royal ball, suggesting it's important to take a break regardless of intentions. Liliej's face lights up, explaining that a ball hosted by the royal family is next month and she has dreamed of attending since she was a little girl. She confesses she always wanted to attend with Lord Alexid, but says that was in the past, prompting Claudine to ask if Prince Nikolai said something to her and to insist that Alexid accompany her now that the opportunity has arrived. Liliej explains she plans to enter with her mother-in-law, who will be attending for the first time in a long while, but Claudine says this was also her idea. Claudine clarifies that she received a letter from the Duchess asking to lend me my daughter for a little while, and encourages them to enjoy their time together. Claudine then suggests that Alexid join them so they can enter as a trio, as it would be a shame for him to enter alone, causing Liliej to hesitate before admitting she honestly wants him to accompany her. Claudine encourages her to wear her finest dress and dazzle Alexid, reminding her it is his first ball too, so she should enjoy herself without worrying. Liliej is struck by the encouragement, a look of surprised realization on her face. Claudine declares they will be busy preparing, and Liliej agrees, finding the prospect incredibly exciting. Liliej wonders if she has been gently swept into Princess Claudine's schemes but embraces the opportunity, already thinking about what color dress to wear. She resolves to show Alexid how much she has grown and prove that she is no longer a child. The following month, guests mingle under chandeliers in a grand hall. Finally, with Alexid on one side and his mother on the other, Liliej arrives as the royal ball begins. From across the grand room, Lord Alexid looks toward a woman named Liliej and compliments her, remarking how well her dress suits her that day. Liliej's eyes widen as a deep blush spreads across her face in response to the unexpected praise. She turns toward him, her hands clasped together, and offers a quiet, heartfelt thank you for his kind words. Gathering her composure, Liliej returns the compliment, telling Lord Alexid that his own outfit is very fitting, to which he replies with a simple thank you. Lord Alexid then reveals he is grateful to Her Highness, who granted him the right to have this time alone with Liliej today. Her mind races with confusion, questioning why he is saying these words she has so longed to hear when she is convinced it is all just an act. Suddenly, a woman appears between them, cutting into their moment and declaring that they are not alone and that her presence should not be forgotten. The woman, whom Liliage recognizes as her mother-in-law, beams and says that the dress she sent for Lily suits her perfectly. The mother-in-law observes how well the two of them get along, and Liliage, turning her attention to the older woman, says she was greatly looking forward to speaking with her. As Liliage and Lord Elexid move to the dance floor, his mother watches them go, thinking to herself that the road ahead of her son is a difficult one. Lord Elexid extends his hand, formally inviting Liliage to dance, while his mother resolves to entrust Liliage to him just for this moment, but vows to watch them both closely. Liliage gently places her hand into Lord Elexid's, accepting his invitation to the dance. As they dance, a memory surfaces in Liliage's mind of when she was little and used to practice dancing with him, recalling how she frequently stepped on his feet. Now, in the present, she glides across the floor with him and silently wonders if she is dancing well. The music swells and then fades as their dance concludes, leaving them standing together on the ballroom floor. Liliage feels a pang of disappointment that her rare chance to dance with Lord Elexid ended so quickly, even though she understands that dance partners are meant to switch at parties. Without a moment's pause, another gentleman approaches and asks for a dance, an offer she accepts with a polite smile, resolving not to make any missteps. She is swept into one dance after another, with new partners appearing so quickly she doesn't even have time to see their faces, leaving her completely overwhelmed. A suitor calls her a beautiful lady, but Liliage feels she can't go on any longer, her energy completely spent. Yet another man steps forward to request a dance, and as Liliage thinks it's impossible to continue, she wonders desperately what to do. Lord Elexid steps in, firmly stating that his wife needs to rest and that his mother wishes to speak with her, requesting that the crowd give them some space. The hopeful suitor looks on with disappointment while Liliage turns her gaze toward Lord Elexid, her rescuer. With a stern expression, Lord Elexid watches as the other men excuse themselves and disperse from around his wife. Liliage expresses her immense gratitude to Lord Elexid for his intervention, a wave of relief washing over her. As nearby guests murmur about the arrival of the legendary Countess Fawars and their plans to ask her to dance, Lord Elexid tells Liliage to go take a break with his mother who is sitting nearby. He turns his head away, and Liliage watches him with a pensive expression, a silent moment passing between them. Her mother-in-law praises her, saying she was the center of attention and a world-class dancer, not because of her royal connections, but because she is genuinely stunning. The mother-in-law predicts that one day Liliage will be known as the flower of the ballroom, while Lord Elexid reflects on how exhausting it was to dance non-stop, unable to refuse anyone's request. He observes that it seemed she was enjoying herself, but Liliage corrects him, explaining that it was not fun but simply exhausting, as she didn't even understand why so many people kept asking her to dance. Her mother-in-law chides Lord Elexid for being slow-witted and failing to see his wife's fatigue, ordering him to go and fetch her a cold drink. Lord Elexid quietly agrees and departs to fulfill his mother's request. Holding a glass, Liliage takes a sip and lets out a soft sigh, feeling as though she is finally starting to calm down after the chaotic succession of dances. Lord Elexid offers to get her another drink, but his mother dismisses him, saying it won't be necessary because she and Lily will now be speaking privately. Resigned, Lord Elexid accepts the dismissal and decides to leave Liliage with his mother for the time being. Once he is out of earshot, the mother-in-law turns to Liliage and, noting that the annoying ones are gone, asks her to share how her life at the palace has been. Liliage recounts how she initially struggled with the vastness of Demused Palace, often getting lost, but has since grown accustomed to it, learning the names of the staff and working with them as a team to support Princess Claudine. She expresses that having an important role gives her great motivation, a sentiment that brings tears to her mother-in-law's eyes as she marvels at how much Lily has matured. Liliage's story is cut short when she notices a sudden shift in her mother-in-law's expression and turns to see what has captured her attention. A stern-faced, older man now stands near them, his presence commanding the space. As Liliage wonders who the man is, her mother-in-law stares in shock, seemingly recognizing him. The mother-in-law identifies the man as Duke Brunel, confirming his noble status. The realization dawns on Liliage that this stern man is none other than her own father-in-law. Her mother-in-law breaks the silence, her tone sharp as she asks the Duke what he is doing in a place like this. He retorts by asking her the same question, questioning why she isn't at home, and she acknowledges that he must have arrived the previous day to submit a report. Duke Brunel ignores her comment and presses his point, staring intently as he asks her once more what she is doing here. The mother-in-law falters, unable to form a coherent response to his demanding question. She finally finds her voice, defiantly stating that wherever she is happens to be her own business. Abruptly, she tells Liliage that she is feeling unwell and that they should step away from the tense confrontation for a bit. Duke Brunel coldly advises her to return to the palace if she is tired, but then calls out for them to wait as his wife and Liliage start to leave for fresh air. Liliage looks back, caught in the middle of the palpable tension between her in-laws. The Duke's voice cuts through the air, calling Liliage's name and causing her to stop and turn toward him fully. From a distance, the Duke watches as Liliage and his wife stand together on a balcony under the bright light of the full moon. On the balcony, the mother-in-law smiles sadly, telling Liliage it is time for her to go home because it is obvious that this man does not want her here. Liliage lets out a small, quiet gasp, taken aback by the raw sadness in her mother-in-law's words. The moment brings to mind the fact that Alexid's father was often away for work, meaning she had not seen her in-laws interact face-to-face in a very long time. An overwhelming feeling comes over Liliage. For a reason she cannot quite articulate, she knows she cannot leave her mother-in-law alone right now. She reaches out and firmly takes her mother-in-law's hand in her own, a silent gesture of support. Liliage then speaks, telling her mother-in-law that she wants to stay by her side for just a little longer. The mother-in-law offers a faint smile, thanking Liliage for the sentiment but gently insisting that she is truly all right on her own. Undeterred, Liliage suggests that she at least accompany her to the main gate, but her mother-in-law declines again, assuring her there is no need to worry as she has brought a maid with her. Liliage is left to walk alone through a long, majestic corridor lined with tall pillars and arched windows. As she walks, she feels a rising anger, wondering if her father-in-law has any idea how much his cold, compassionless tone hurt his wife, feeling that even if it is improper for her to object, she cannot ignore the cruelty she just witnessed. A woman in a ball gown steals her resolve, deciding she must confront her father-in-law about someone's unacceptable behavior. Her immediate priority, however, is to locate Lord Alexid and inform him that his mother has already departed, leaving her without the Duke's carriage. She pauses mid-stride, struck by the memory that she only danced with him once and now wonders if he has since danced with another woman. She rationalizes that she has no grounds to be upset, reminding herself that dances are social obligations and that she herself danced with multiple men. Despite her internal logic, a close-up of her face reveals a lingering sense of unease. She silently acknowledges that the thought of Lord Alexid dancing with someone else stirs an unwelcome feeling within her. Just then, Lord Alexid appears, calling her name, Liliage, and urgently asks what has happened and where his mother is. As Liliage begins to explain, a group of men excitedly spot her, exclaiming that Lady Fawars has appeared just as they were discussing her. The men reveal that they were feeling discouraged because Alexid had been consistently deflecting their requests for an introduction to her. Liliage surmises they must be his friends and concludes that it would be proper for her to introduce herself. She offers a graceful curtsy and presents herself as Liliage, the wife of Alexid Noir Brunel, which causes the men to blush in admiration. Her new acquaintances express their delight, confessing they've heard palace rumors about her and were determined to meet the beautiful wife Alexid had kept hidden, before promptly asking her to dance. While Liliage weighs her options, not wanting to be rude to his friends, Alexid intervenes, declaring that his wife is exhausted from attending her first ball. He formally declines their offers on her behalf, stating she is completely worn out after dancing several times in a row and that they must postpone. Alexid then guides Liliage away, leaving his friends bewildered as they remark on his unusually different demeanor and an expression they've never seen on his face before. Liliage lets out a small, surprised gasp as he leads her down the corridor. They proceed down the long hall in a tense silence. She quietly speaks his name, drawing attention to his firm grip on her arm. He finally comes to a halt and turns, reminding her that they were in the middle of a conversation before they were interrupted. Liliage relays the message about his mother's early departure and the subsequent lack of a carriage, explaining she must now wait for its return from the palace. She then questions if it was awkward for him to reject his friends so bluntly, but he brushes it off, claiming they aren't close and he was merely gathering information. She observes that he seemed quite familiar with them, but he insists it was a mere formality for social etiquette and that she shouldn't worry about it. Liliage clarifies that she truly does not mind if he dances with other people. Alexid moves suddenly, his expression hardening. He reiterates with a sharp tone that it is not something she needs to concern herself with. The sudden intensity of his voice leaves both of them momentarily shocked. He immediately apologizes, admitting he did not intend to speak so harshly. Liliage thinks to herself that his tone was undeniably strict, as if he were scolding a child. She begins to question if he still perceives her as a child, recalling how he stepped in between her and his friends to prevent her from speaking. The thought solidifies into a painful feeling that he acted as if he were ashamed of her, wanting to hide her away from others. He starts to apologize again, but she cuts him off, saying there is no need as she pulls her arm away. Turning from him, she thinks about how he never shares anything about his life or relationships with her, leaving her to feel utterly ignorant. Overcome with emotion, she whirls back to face him, her voice trembling as she asks how he could possibly speak to her in such a way. He calls out for her to wait as she turns away again. She stops, unable to prevent a tear from forming in her eye. With the distant music of the grand hall in the background, she reflects on her own naivete. She had believed that being able to attend a ball signified her transition into adulthood, a notion she now sees as foolish. Alexid softly calls her by a shorter name, Lily, as he tries to speak. Her back still to him, she declares that the thing she hates most in the entire world is being treated like a child. His face is filled with a conflicted, pained expression as he watches her. A single tear traces a path down her cheek. She thinks of her lifelong dream, to grow up, to reach his level, and to finally be able to stand by his side as an equal. Yet she despairs that no matter what she does, the 10-year gap separating them feels impossible to close. Alexid states plainly that he was not treating her like a child, and though a part of her knows this, the feeling persists. He then confesses the simple truth: he didn't want to see her dancing with any other man. His unexpected admission hangs between them, altering the very air they breathe. A deep blush spreads across her face as she processes the implication, wondering if he was actually jealous. The realization dawns that he might have been feeling the exact same possessiveness that she felt, not wanting him to dance with anyone else. Her breath catches in her throat as the weight of this possibility sinks in. Finding her voice, she proposes that if he truly feels the same way she does, he should prove it by inviting her to the next dance. She concludes her plea by saying that this action might allow her to finally trust him, leaving him looking momentarily stunned. His resolve seems to break as he suddenly apologizes and tells her to forget everything he just said. He dismisses his confession as being out of character, leaving her crushed and wondering if his words were not from the heart but a warning against attachment. Accepting that his true feelings were fleeting, she announces it is time for her to leave, and he offers to escort her out. While walking, she apologizes for being unkind earlier, attributing it to nerves, but he takes the blame, saying his harsh tone was what was wrong. Her private thoughts are a painful lament. If he doesn't want her to become attached, he should not say things that give her hope. Their walk takes them outside into the cool night air of the estate grounds. He notices she is cold and gently drapes his formal coat over her shoulders. He explains that the night breeze could be harmful as she thanks him for the kind gesture. The scent of his cologne envelopes her, a personal and intimate fragrance rising from the fabric. Wrapped in his coat and his scent, she feels as if she is completely surrounded by him. He notices her quietness and asks if something is wrong, but she quickly replies that it is nothing. She looks at him, realizing that despite all the confusion and hurt, she still feels something profound for him. Several days after the banquet, officials discuss the persistent issue of smuggling illegal goods of Ermenid origin, a concern that has grown in recent years. Despite close monitoring of maritime trade, smuggling continues overland as criminals skillfully steal property from noble families within the governed territories and secretly transport the goods to the Shapfire region to be sold. A map displays the local geography, showing that both Shapfire and the southern state of Ermenid border the sea, which is why trade is usually conducted via ships and has led to much stricter government surveillance. The current king imposes severe restrictions on the territories to prevent powerful figures in Ermenid from becoming more influential, but some residents of Shapfire have recently become more blatant in their aim to exploit the Ermenid side. The mastermind behind this operation is likely Count Trapani, who owns the lands containing the road that connects Shapfire and Ermenid and is suspected of being involved in both the illegal trade and the unlawful collection of transit taxes. The current situation is described as a grim, almost pitch-black scenario, making it essential to gather evidence. A blonde-haired man considers the political situation, noting that while his political views generally align with His Majesty the King, they must reconsider how they handle the Ermenid governorship so as not to sow the seeds of rebellion. He decides they must start by arresting Count Trapani, who is emerging as the mastermind, and then implement fundamental changes to the system of governance. To create a natural reason to make contact, he plans to prepare a mission to visit Count Trapani and the Sardino family, an old noble house in Maribon, by sending envoys under the pretense of fostering friendly relations. However, a man addressed as Your Highness voices his concern. The Highness states he does not want Liliage involved in this matter, but the other man, says it is a settled matter, explaining that the presence of an innocent girl like Lady Liliage will be more effective for deceiving their target. The Highness understands the logic, but his heart feels heavy at the thought of taking her to Maribon without her knowing anything about the true nature of their visit. The conversation shifts when one man asks if it is true that a musician supported by Count Trapani will be performing at the open-air theater in Maribon. Another confirms the musician, Darian Rontani, has gained considerable fame. The Highness internally registers the name Darian Rontani, remembering him as the violinist Liliage had mentioned before. He silently seethes, wondering why he must be the one to invite her to a concert featuring a man she is interested in, even though it is an official mission. Elle informs him that he pushed the arrangements forward quickly since it is the social season and the other side welcomed the plan, adding that he will speak to Lady Liliage about it soon with Claudine present. The Highness walks down a long hall, reflecting that he doesn't want to use Liliage for political purposes, but as a vassal of Duke Brunel, he has duties that simply cannot be avoided. He resolves that all he can do is protect her himself. He will allow her to attend only daytime social events and the concert, ensuring she remains at the residence otherwise. His mind wanders to the last ball, where Liliage was the center of attention. He desperately wanted to keep her from dancing with so many people, but greetings and obligations kept him from getting close to her. To make matters worse, during the social season, rumors spread easily because people treat love as nothing more than a game, which unfortunately led him to introduce her to superficial acquaintances instead of trusted friends. He acknowledges how narrow-minded he is, even thinking that some people attend parties looking for a new partner after a divorce. He wants to get closer to her, but his fear that she will reject his true feelings causes him to say things like, "Forget me." His thoughts are interrupted by an approaching figure. He recognizes his father, whom he hasn't seen in about a year, and explains that he has been staying at the royal palace instead of the Spheri estate. The Highness asks his father how long he will stay now that he's returned, but his father replies he will head back as soon as he finishes his reports and administrative tasks. The narration explains that his father has held the position of governor over the Ermenid territories for a long time, following a war where Ermenid's lands were annexed shortly after the current king took the throne. These were necessary measures to suppress any intent of resistance. More than 10 years after the king's rule began, the previous governor was replaced, and his father was sent to the post, where he has been ever since. The Highness suggests that the time has come for his father to step down, stating that his subordinates are more than capable now and that a leader must trust and delegate, but his father dismisses him as an insolent young man. His father then brings up that girl, Liliage, asking about his wife's plans to adopt her. The Highness asks if his mother told him about this, but his father says he received a report about it and tells Alexid to let her do as she wishes. Alexid lets out a gasp of disbelief. He asks if his father is ordering him to divorce Liliage. His father coldly replies that if that's what she wants, then he should let her. Alexid clenches his fist and firmly states that she is his wife. His father retorts that the marriage was a secondary matter. The main reason was his mother's wish to become a mother herself by agreeing to take in the little princess from Sergua. He reminds his son that he already knows this story well. His mother, Henrietta, was told by doctors that another pregnancy would not be safe, forcing a choice between her life and her child's. Alexid confirms that he is aware of the story and has known it since childhood. His father states that his wife wished for a daughter, so he gave her one, and that is all there is to it. When Alexid brings up that a divorce is considered a scandal, his father says they should simply not let anyone speak of it. Alexid stands his ground, declaring that even if it is his father's order, he will not agree to it. His wife is Liliage and no one else. His father turns and walks away without another word. After several days, Liliage and her companions depart for Maribon. She was told that as a married couple, they were selected as envoys to lend artworks for a short period. In the carriage, she thinks about how sudden and unexpected the decision was, noting that even Princess Claudine was upset. She recalls her childhood tutor telling her about an old dispute between House Sardino and the royal family and hopes for a peaceful visit. A grand dinner is held in their honor. Their host says it's great that this is their first time visiting Maribon and praises the city for being incredibly beautiful and full of character. The host then announces that tomorrow they will all go to a music concert at the open-air theater, which he proudly calls a magnificent relic of the past. Another guest mentions that they are planning to invite the musician to a masquerade party they will be hosting soon and extends an invitation to all of them. The party is described as an event for adults to mingle, where guests wear masks to hide their identities for one unforgettable night. Liliage knows Lord Alexid doesn't usually attend such events, but she thinks to herself that if she participated, maybe she would grow up a bit on the inside. The host asks if the young couple from House Brunel will be attending, and Liliage fully expects Alexid to find an excuse to decline as he always does. To her shock, Alexid announces that they would be happy to attend. Liliage can't believe he accepted the invitation just like that. The host remarks that while the son of Duke Brunel is said to be strict and serious, it seems he has an interest in these kinds of gatherings too. Alexid calmly states that he doesn't see himself as that strict, and the host then turns to ask his wife for her thoughts. Liliage is inwardly flustered, thinking this behavior doesn't seem like Lord Alexid at all, and decides it's best to give a neutral response. She resolves to respond without saying anything excessive. A young woman expresses her shock and confusion, questioning the meaning of being told to stay at the inn by herself. The scene reveals a sparsely populated room where a maid stands apart from a finely dressed man and woman, while another man looks on from a distance. The man, dressed in a formal brocade jacket, informs her that he will attend the masquerade party alone while she must remain at the inn to rest, prompting her to demand a reason. He questions if she understands what a masquerade party truly is, and she responds with confident affirmation. She describes her knowledge of such parties as events where attendees wear masks and conceal their identities to enjoy a single night of revelry. She asks if he intends to enjoy such a fleeting night, but he clarifies that his attendance is strictly for work. The woman argues her case, stating that as representatives of the royal family, it is her duty to help build relations with the Sardino family, and it is unacceptable for her to be the only wife of an envoy left behind, especially when the others are experienced and less likely to fall into traps. The man, Lord Alexid, expresses his suspicion of the Sardino family's ill intent and questions the necessity of the event being a masquerade. She asks him directly if he dislikes masquerade parties, recalling his aversion to noisy places, and theorizes that people use the anonymity of masks to overstep boundaries, a point which he confirms. Surprised by his admission, she asks why he despises them with such intensity. He falls silent, visibly hesitating to explain his reasoning, prompting her to ask what is wrong. He begins to explain that while masquerades appear as simple costume parties, the anonymity is often exploited for morally and ethically questionable activities. The implication of his words causes her to blush intensely as he continues that such events, especially when encouraged by the organizer, lead to the deterioration of public morality. Her understanding dawns with horror. She had thought enjoying the night meant card games or harmless bets, but now grasps the darker potential of masked anonymity. She confronts Lord Alexid, her expression darkened, accusing him of planning to spend a pleasant night with someone else, but he immediately and forcefully denies it. He insists his purpose is not fun and that he believes it is just a normal dance party, hoping the Sardino family is honorable, though she points out he still accepted their invitation regardless. She offers to play cards with him properly at the inn instead, her suspicion growing that there must be another reason for his insistence on going alone. Her anxiety escalates into a direct accusation, fearing that his work is a pretense to find a new wife after their planned divorce. Lord Alexid sighs, his expression weary from her escalating fears. He leans in close, whispering that she must not tell anyone what he is about to reveal. He discloses that he is attending because he received a secret mission directly from His Highness the Crown Prince, making his absence from the masquerade impossible. Liliage absorbs this new information with a look of understanding, and he expresses relief that she comprehends the situation. With the matter settled, she states that she will now prepare for bed. They bid each other good night, him using her name, Liliage, while she addresses him formally as Lord Alexid. Alone in her room, Liliage berates herself as a failure for forcing him to reveal sensitive details about his work. She reflects that as the wife of a man in the Crown Prince's service, she should have known he has secrets he cannot share, and her presence would have only been a dangerous distraction. She admits to herself that her jealousy and feelings of being excluded blinded her to the broader perspective. Clenching the bedsheets, she laments her own immaturity. She wonders if things could have been different if she were more accustomed to high society or if the age gap between them were smaller, imagining a scenario where she could have confidently supported him. Though she knows staying behind is the best way to help, she can't stop comparing herself unfavorably to the other envoys' wives. She feels a deep loneliness and the pain of being separated from him. The scene briefly flashes back to Lord Alexid staring out a window, a solitary figure. The narrative shifts to the day of a musical concert, where Lord Alexid greets Liliage and compliments her on her beautiful dress. A flustered Liliage thanks him, thinking to herself that he looks as amazing as ever. They are shown at a grand outdoor amphitheater filled with rows of benches for the audience. As they sit together on a bench, he speaks her name to get her attention. He says that although this time is different, he would like for the two of them to come again next year. Her mind immediately jumps to the fact that their marriage is contracted to end, and by next year they will be divorced. She says she will likely be at a summer resort with his mother, but he surprises her by offering to join them there, or to go anywhere else she might wish to visit. He asks if she is cold in the outdoor venue, commenting on the impractical lightness of women's dresses, which she explains is for aesthetic purposes. He offers to lend her his coat, which sends her into an internal panic as she fears being enveloped in his scent once more. She is suddenly reminded of his scent, faintly blended with cologne, from the night of the masquerade ball. Blushing fiercely, she tries to push the memory away. She politely declines his offer, claiming it would make her stand out too much. She points out that the musicians are gathering and assures him she is fine, as she brought her own shawl. Her attention is drawn to the stage, where she spots a particular musician and wonders if it is him. She recognizes the man as the famous violinist Darian Rontani and notes that he looks just as the rumors described. Lord Alexid observes him as well, remarking that Rontani certainly looks like a man who is popular with women. Liliage notices a shift in his demeanor and asks what is wrong, but he dismisses it as nothing. Rontani gives a charming wave to his admirers in the crowd, drawing a loud cheer and momentarily distracting Liliage. Lord Alexid, having missed part of the exchange, asks Liliage if that type of man is her preference, a suggestion she quickly refutes. She explains that it's a completely different thing. While Rontani is objectively handsome with a gentle aura, he is not her type, and she was simply caught up in the crowd's excitement as the performance begins. As the orchestra starts to play, Lord Alexid watches with a pensive expression. Liliage, seated beside him, murmurs her appreciation for the beautiful melody. The evening sky darkens to a deep indigo, casting a magical atmosphere over the concert. The focus of the performance shifts to a violin solo by Darian Rontani. The camera zooms in on Rontani as he plays with intense focus and passion. Liliage is completely mesmerized by the beautiful notes, sensing a touch of sadness within the sweet melody. She thinks about her own long history with the violin, acknowledging that she could never produce a sound so captivating. Admitting a twinge of jealousy, she remains utterly captivated by the music, while beside her, Lord Alexid appears visibly tense. As they leave after the concert, Liliage praises the truly wonderful performance, and Lord Alexid offers a clipped, simple agreement. His internal thoughts reveal his lingering insecurity over the way she looked at Darian, a feeling compounded by the knowledge he must soon leave for the masquerade party. Despite her reassurance that the violinist wasn't her type, the image continues to bother him. A tranquil night scene unfolds beneath a large, luminous moon, its light filtering through clouds and tree leaves as bright specks of light float in the air. Inside a brick room, a young woman with long, fair hair sits on the edge of her bed, recalling that she had felt unwell and was confined to her room since noon. With a somber expression, she rises and begins to walk through the stone corridors of the building. She steps out into the night air of an inner courtyard, deciding that a brief walk should be harmless enough. As she walks, she reflects on Lord Alexid's unexpected confidence in her, telling her about a secret mission from the prince that involved dancing with someone else, a secret he could have easily kept. She considers that the Lord Alexid of the past would have simply given a stern order for her to remain in place. Clutching the fabric of her dress, she wonders if this change signifies a growing closeness between them. Standing amidst the foliage, she quietly murmurs Lord Alexid's name to herself. Her thoughts drift to the ball, imagining him dancing with another woman, more charming and beautiful than herself, acknowledging that such things are a matter of social courtesy. Despite this rationalization, the image clearly upsets her, and she stands by a body of water with her cheeks puffed out in frustration. A wave of insecurity washes over her as she questions if her childish appearance is the issue, contemplating new makeup techniques and noting recent changes in her figure. She abruptly realizes her wandering thoughts have carried her to the city's edge and scolds herself for worrying about his tastes, resolving to turn back. As she turns to leave, she spots something in the nearby bushes, her mind immediately leaping to the possibility of a secret rendezvous. Drawing on the gossip she has heard from palace servants, she resolves that the proper, adult response is to act as if she has seen nothing at all. She cautiously peeks through the foliage for a closer look. A sudden flash of movement is captured in a close-up of an eye, indicating a swift departure. Startled, she pulls back as something streaks away into the sky, questioning what she just witnessed before deciding it is best to return home immediately. The following morning, she awakens in her bed, unaware of the significant encounter that the day holds for her. Now dressed and looking out her window at the early dawn, she notes the church bells have yet to ring and decides to go for a short walk. She arrives at a serene garden fountain, donning a wide-brimmed straw hat and appreciating the luxurious solitude of the early hour. While dipping her hands into the fountain's cool water, she is startled by a presence and looks up to see a man standing behind her. The tall, well-dressed man smiles and asks if someone else had been there before him. She lets out a small gasp of surprise, and he quickly apologizes for startling her, explaining he hadn't expected anyone to be about so early. He then surprises her by addressing her as, "My young lady," and before she can ask how he knows of her, he introduces himself as Darian Rantani. She instantly recognizes the name, realizing she is standing before the famous violinist who has captivated high society. She apologizes for her rude reaction, while Darian internally muses on whether this beautiful angel is incapable of understanding human language. Composing herself, she tells him that she recently saw him perform at the open-air theater and found his concert to be truly enchanting. He expresses his honor that she has listened to his music, and she finds herself captivated by his voice and movements, silently questioning why she feels so enchanted. Darian claims he woke with a strange feeling that something was waiting for him, suggesting that fate guided him to meet her, his goddess. She is left utterly bewildered by his poetic and forward declaration. She internally debates whether he is a natural romantic or if this charm is simply an extension of his stage persona. He steps closer and takes her hand, insisting she call him Darian without any formal titles, which causes her to flinch in surprise. Noticing her discomfort, he immediately apologizes for scaring her and takes a small step back. He offers a disarming smile, giving her a moment to collect herself after the intense introduction. He sits casually on the edge of the fountain, remarking with playful confidence that the attention from so many girls has perhaps made him a bit conceited. His gaze then locks with hers as he pointedly asks for her thoughts on the matter. He then directly asks if she would like to be friends with him. The question catches her completely off guard, leaving her to wonder about his true intentions. He presses further, asking if she doesn't feel a sense of fate about their chance meeting. She feels a rising panic, realizing her etiquette lessons are useless in teaching her how to elegantly respond to such a handsome and direct man. Her immediate instinct is to decline by stating she is Lord Alexid's wife, knowing that entertaining a flirtatious advance would put her in an awkward position. Yet, as she grips her hat tightly, a flicker of hesitation stops her. She questions whether she can truly use her marital status as a defense when she expects to be divorced in less than a year. Just as she struggles for an answer, a firm voice cuts through the air, speaking her name, Liliage. Lord Alexid stands there, his gaze falling upon Liliage and Darian by the fountain. After they exchange quiet morning greetings, Liliage observes Lord Alexid, sensing an unfamiliar tension in his demeanor. Lord Alexid acknowledges Darian by his full name, asking what he's doing out at such an early hour, prompting Liliage to quickly explain it was a chance encounter while she was praising his recent performance. She apologizes if their meeting gave the wrong impression and insists it was a coincidence, but Lord Alexid's expression tightens when he hears her use Darian's first name. Darian intervenes smoothly, asking Lord Alexid not to be harsh with his sister, and explaining he was merely greeting the kind young lady. Lord Alexid's gaze remains fixed on Darian as he corrects the assumption, stating plainly, "I'm her husband." He reiterates the point with unwavering firmness, declaring that Liliage is his wife. He continues that any husband would naturally be displeased to find his wife in a private conversation with another man, especially at an hour that suggests a prearranged meeting. Darian immediately bows an apology, assuring Lord Alexid that their meeting was purely coincidental and expressing regret if it appeared otherwise. A heavy silence descends upon the trio, the tension palpable in the morning air by the fountain. Lord Alexid eventually accepts Darian's explanation, noting his sincere demeanor, and then apologizes for his own narrow-mindedness where his wife is concerned. Darian smiles graciously, commenting that it is only natural to worry and that he finds the sentiment very sweet. He adds a final compliment, remarking that Liliage seems quite pure and innocent. With that, Darian takes his leave, and as Liliage watches her husband's rigid posture, she confirms her suspicion that something about his behavior today is profoundly strange. A man with dark hair watches from a distance as a younger man and a long-haired woman sit separately on the edge of a fountain, a visible space between them. The woman internally reflects on the awkward atmosphere, wishing the man would say something to break the heavy silence that has fallen between them. The man then moves closer, reaching out to gently cup her face in his hand. She is visibly flustered by the sudden, intimate gesture, her hand rising to her cheek as he gazes at her intently. He quietly asks for permission to touch her, prompting her to think that Lord Alexid is behaving in a way that is different from his usual self. He questions her decision to walk in the garden alone without an escort, advising her to think more before she acts, but she explains that she sometimes just wants solitude. Annoyed, she retorts that she was simply enjoying a morning stroll, which leads him to ask if his presence makes her that uncomfortable. Before the conversation can continue, the distant sound of a bell ringing cuts through the tension. He remarks on her apparent enjoyment of another man's performance and asks if she prefers men who are constantly pampered by women, while she privately admits the man's voice was soothing and he seemed kind. He warns her that women are easily deceived by such men, but she asserts that she will not be, explaining she was merely stunned when the man called her a goddess. Lord Alexid sarcastically asks if being called a goddess made her happy and accuses her of being flirted with, prompting an angry response that he was eavesdropping and that she felt stunned, not happy. She internally justifies that compliments from men like that are part of their lifestyle and it is Lord Alexid who has acted inappropriately, even if he only views her as a younger sister. The realization dawns on her that he is angry because he witnessed his wife appearing friendly with another man in a public space, despite it being a misunderstanding. He asks her if she has ever truly looked at her face in a mirror, and she replies that she sees it regularly every day. He tells her that she must then realize how unbelievably beautiful she is, calling her Liliage by name and urging her to be more aware of her appearance and act accordingly. Liliage is completely baffled by his sudden and unexpected compliment, wondering what he could possibly be talking about now. She begins to apologize for potentially harming his social standing and promises to be more careful, but he interrupts to say that he does not want an apology from her. She accuses him of always blaming her and refusing to believe her, to which he replies that because she is his wife, he must intervene if she allows other men to get close to her. He then declares that if she feels that way, she should start looking at him as a man, leaving her speechless. Following his declaration, he leans in and kisses her. She is completely shocked by the kiss, her mind reeling as she questions what is happening. The kiss continues by the water fountain. She suddenly breaks away, pushing him back and shouting, "No." In the aftermath, both stand apart, looking flustered and surprised by the turn of events. Her thoughts race as she questions how he could kiss her, someone she believes he only sees as a sister and for whom he has no romantic feelings. He stares back at her, his expression intense and difficult to read. He begins to speak, telling her that regardless of what she might think about their situation, he will not let her go and he absolutely will not divorce her. A memory surfaces in her mind of a past kiss that felt like it was only intended to calm her down. She reflects on how she has always been the one to initiate, wanting his heart and wishing he could feel even a fraction of the love she has for him. The memory shifts to him embracing her tightly while saying her name. She remains in his arms, her eyes wide with surprise and uncertainty. And yet, despite everything, she finds herself in his embrace once more. Her internal conflict is laid bare. She still loves Lord Alexid and clings to hope, even after deciding on divorce and hearing his true feelings 2 years prior. She fears that if she continues down this path, she will be forced to live under the crushing weight of his one-sided feelings forever. Pulling away from his hug, she thinks the situation is ridiculous and calls him cruel, while he looks back at her, confused by her words. They stand apart by the fountain once again, the brief moment of closeness shattered. She looks up at him with a sad but knowing smile. She acknowledges to herself that she knew she could have remained his wife forever if she had simply kept pretending not to know the truth of his feelings. She recalls a past conversation where she asked if dealing with a girl he didn't see as a woman was tiring, lamenting that she never understood before how painful it is to live unloved. She confronts him, accusing him of calming her with empty words while still taking her lips and holding her whenever he pleases. With a resigned expression, she tells him that if that is truly how he sees things, then his actions are incredibly insulting to her. She reveals that she has known his real feelings for a long time, ever since she overheard him at a garden party when she was 16, telling his friends that she was nothing more than a child to him. Lord Alexid is stunned by her revelation, stammering as he asks how she could have possibly known about that private conversation. She recounts their shared past, arriving as his bride at age 8 and being only 11 when he returned from abroad, concluding that having to care for a little girl must have been a great burden on him. He starts to protest, saying what he said back then wasn't the full story, but she cuts him off, stating that she doesn't need excuses and that it's too late for them now. She offers a faint, melancholic smile as water splashes from the fountain behind them, a sense of finality in her expression. She confesses that she's tired of it all and hates herself for still being affected by his every word and action, which continue to control her emotions. She begs him to leave her alone if he will not love her, pleading with him not to kiss her and confuse her when there's no love behind it, because she won't be able to recover. Her composure finally breaks as she looks at him with anguish. Overcome with emotion, she screams that she hates him with all her heart. He stands silently in profile, his face unreadable in the wake of her emotional outburst. She turns and flees the garden, leaving him sitting alone on the edge of the fountain. Running into the residence, she startles a maid and realizes with horror what she has just said to him. She throws herself onto her bed, crying and hiccuping in distress. The words, "I hate you," repeat in her mind as she sobs, consumed by regret. She thinks to herself that she never truly meant to say those words, that they were just a product of her anger and pain. While questioning why she got so carried away, she puzzles over why Lord Alexid's expression looked as if he was the one who was more hurt by her words. She reflects that even though she was the one who decided on the divorce, which should have been a relief, her chest aches as if something is choking her, and she questions why she feels so much pain when she knows their divorce is now certain. A woman remembers the last words she spoke on her final day in Maribon, a declaration of pure hatred. The memory still tormented her upon her return to Spheri, where she was hit with another shock. News of a great thief active in both Maribon and Spheri, targeting the rare item collection of the Serdino family head. Another lady asks if she saw the great thief's face, but she can only express astonishment that the Serdino family's house was robbed in the first place. The women around her gossip about the thief's rumored good looks, based on a play held in Spheri, though they acknowledge no one could have actually seen him, as the news confirms he broke into the Serdino residence. The crime, which happened the night before, prompted a large-scale investigation from the guards, but the results were unsatisfactory, leaving Duke Serdino enraged. In the aftermath, a man named Alexid became completely absorbed in the case, traveling daily between Maribon and Spheri to conduct his investigation. He became so busy that she hasn't been able to speak with him even once, leaving her to watch from afar and worry about his non-stop work. Alexid is seen in his office, telling a subordinate that he will leave from Maribon again after reviewing documents, while the subordinate expresses disbelief that such a bold theft could happen during a masquerade party that Alexid himself attended. The subordinate suggests leaving the search to local authorities, but Alexid refuses, insisting on taking full responsibility as the incident occurred during his stay as a royal envoy. The subordinate observes his superior, concluding that the extremely serious matter is causing Alexid to push himself too hard, burying himself in work to avoid thinking about something else. His concern pivots, and he decides he should check on a woman named Claudine when he has free time. Elsewhere, Lady Claudine claps her hands, telling a group of women that their chat is over and it's time to resume their music practice. After they finish for the day, Claudine announces that she has invited a very special guest to this year's party. The ladies plead with her to reveal the guest's identity, but Lady Claudine remains secretive, telling them they will find out in a few days and to enjoy the surprise. As the others leave, Claudine turns to the blonde woman, now identified as Liliage, to speak with her privately. Liliage is formally thanking Claudine, feeling honored to be chosen for the concert despite her short time at the royal court, while Claudine praises her violin skills. Claudine suddenly grows quiet and stares at Liliage, prompting Liliage to ask her what is wrong. Without forcing her to speak, Claudine looks at her with concern. She gently advises Liliage not to bear all of her burdens by herself. When Claudine observes that Liliage has seemed depressed lately, Liliage attempts a weak denial. Liliage internally admits defeat, realizing that while she tried to keep her personal feelings separate from her work, Lady Claudine had seen right through her facade. Claudine says her name, Liliage, and steps toward her with an understanding expression. With tears welling in her eyes, Liliage looks up at Claudine's gentle smile. Claudine pulls her into a comforting embrace. She then turns and gives an order to a nearby maid, telling her to leave them alone. After Liliage explains what happened in Maribon and the words she remembered, Claudine expresses her sympathy for all she has endured. Liliage looks down, a blush of shame and sadness on her face. She finally confesses the truth. She does not hate Lord Alexid, but rather, she still loves him. Claudine sips her tea with a knowing smile, which catches Liliage by surprise. She explains to the stunned Liliage that her true feelings are very obvious and took only a few moments to perceive. Claudine states plainly that Liliage is still truly and deeply in love with Alexid. The directness of the statement leaves Liliage speechless, realizing her secret was known. Pulling her into another hug, Claudine reassures her that her hateful words were not from the heart, but were said out of pain and a desire for him to understand her sadness. Liliage admits it's true, confessing she never meant it and that she was overjoyed by the birthday gift of a little bear he had given her. She explains it was the first gift she had ever received, and she wrote him a letter thanking him and asking for a friend for the bear the following year. Lord Alexid had remembered her letter and was simply keeping his promise by giving her a new stuffed bear every year. She now regrets not being honest, wishing she had clearly told him that as a grown woman she wanted a more age-appropriate gift. Claudine notes that Alexid is a kind and sincere person, though perhaps too literal, and Liliage agrees that she loves that serious nature of his but couldn't bring herself to be honest. Claudine relates to her struggle, sharing that her own mother called her too strong-willed and that she herself frequently argues with a man named Nikolai. She sighs with a sad smile, remarking on the hardships of marriage. Liliage whispers the word, divorce, then states with conviction that she does not want it. She feels a sense of release, having finally spoken aloud the true feelings she had kept hidden from everyone. With newfound clarity, she declares her love for Lord Alexid and her resolve to keep thinking of him, regardless of his own feelings. A wave of despair follows her confession as she concludes that it's all over now and that he must surely hate her. Claudine gently counters this, reminding Liliage that she hasn't actually talked to him yet and that he is simply preoccupied with the Great Thief case, assuring her that a chance to speak calmly will come once it is settled. Claudine bemoans the thief's terrible timing, robbing the Sardino house at such a critical moment, and a blushing Liliage agrees. Patting her on the back, Claudine tells her not to worry and that everything will ultimately be fine. The comforting gesture triggers a memory for Liliage of a time she cried and Lord Alexid himself patted her head, strengthening her resolve not to remain in sadness. Liliage declares she is okay now and apologizes for causing worry, but Claudine dismisses it, saying Liliage is like a little sister and it's fine for her to lean on her sometimes. Claudine advises her that couples can make up after a fight if they are honest with their feelings, and notes that Liliage already seems more at ease. Liliage smiles, a genuine and bright expression of agreement. She realizes hiding her feelings and rushing to divorce created the rift between them, and she decides she will apologize from her heart and speak honestly with him. Determined not to repeat her past mistake, she vows to take back her declaration of hate. She soberly accepts, however, that her feelings alone are not enough to sustain a marriage. Her final plan forms: she will convey her feelings honestly one last time, not to cling pathetically, but to give him a proper goodbye after telling him she still loves him. After this final, honest conversation, she resolves to truly accept a role like that of a sister to him. The serious mood lifts, and Liliage asks for a hint about the special concert guest, but Claudine playfully refuses to tell even her. The two women share a moment of light-hearted laughter. Liliage reflects on the deep comfort that comes from having someone who cares, a safe place where she can honestly express herself. Their peaceful moment is shattered when a frantic Lady Garson rushes in, surprised to see Her Majesty looking so relaxed. Claudine's expression immediately hardens as she listens to whatever urgent news has arrived. A man is heard calling Liliage's name as she is seen running down a corridor with a look of panic. A man broods over his repeated failures to grow closer to Liliage, realizing that with each attempt, the distance between them only grows wider. He knows that she only heard the words that came from his mouth. At a garden party 2 years prior, those words, though not truly from his heart, became everything to her. Their marriage had been the talk of Spheri society, with the significant age gap between them drawing unwanted attention. At the party, a viscount offered dessert to Countess Fawars while the protagonist's associates called him over, asking about his friend. The men pulled him aside, pressing him for details about his wife, asking if she was as elegant as she looked and what her personality was like. They remarked that while they initially pitted him for the marriage, They now felt he looked amazing just walking beside her and that he could mold her tiny body however he wanted. Disgust washed over him as they concluded that he got a sweet deal in the end. He internally seethed, wanting to tell them to stop looking at her with such filthy eyes and to stop evaluating her like an object. Then came the damning realization that he himself had been the very first person to devalue her. He remembered watching her transform from a small child into a beautiful young lady, a maturation that shone like a light before his eyes and stirred desires he barely managed to restrain. He desperately wanted to hide his dark emotions and possessive nature from the pure girl. He now understood that the men who provoked his anger were merely reflections of the desires buried deep within himself. The weight of this truth settled upon him. He recalled his own callous words, his complaint that he had been forced to marry a child. He remembered his frustration boiling over, unaware that Liliage was nearby and could hear him. He declared to the men that even if she matured, he would never see her as a woman, just as Liliage overheard him from behind a pillar. He said those things only to distract himself from his true feelings and in the hope that others would finally stop talking about her. It never occurred to him that she was listening, as he believed such a harsh statement would cause the others to lose interest. So when she later told him that she hated him, the words struck him with the force of a heavy hammer. Only in that moment did he finally begin to understand everything. Her sudden change in behavior, the coldness that crept into her letters, and her refusal to meet his eyes all stemmed from that day. The fault for all of it, he knew, was his alone. His words had become her reality, and she had been suffering in silence since she was 16 years old. He contemplated his own arrogance, remembering how his final words to her had been a refusal to grant her a divorce. The scene changes to the protagonist, Elexid, giving a report to His Highness, explaining that a masquerade held by the Sardino family appeared peaceful on the surface, giving him initial relief. Elexid continued that even though they monitored their primary suspect, Count Trapani, a crime still took place, leading him to believe the thief was hidden among the other invited guests. He described a strange, sweet fragrance like medicine that spread through the hall, though the already euphoric guests paid it no mind. Elexid, however, recognized the scent and immediately sought out Duke Sardino, suspecting it was one of the Duke's private pleasures gone too far, but the Duke showed no signs of involvement. This led Elexid to conclude the great thief released the scent, as the Duke later denied all knowledge and would have blamed the thief regardless. His Highness inquired about the stolen items, but Elexid could only report that as a guest, he was powerless to act. Elexid explained that the Duke evaded all questions about the item's origins and simply called for the great thief's capture, making it clear he would never admit the goods were stolen, and that there was still no evidence linking the matter to Count Trapani. His Highness called the situation a troublesome mess and considered using his authority to force a confession, but Elexid warned that without evidence, they could be blamed instead, especially given the Duke's connections. The prince noted that catching the great thief would make one an instant hero, an honor Elexid gladly deferred to him, suggesting their priority should be breaking the Erminids' siege first. His Highness let out a sigh, musing that if he succeeded, perhaps a woman named Claudine would finally see him differently. He then revealed to Elexid that Claudine was planning to invite a celebrity, Darian Rontani, to an upcoming banquet, lamenting his inability to understand women's obsessions when he was so clearly superior. Elexid's expression remained neutral as he listened. He quietly contemplated the name Darian. The prince noticed his silence and asked if something about the man bothered him, but Elexid insisted it was nothing. The prince then shifted topics, questioning Elexid's recent overworking, which Elexid dismissed as proper fulfillment of his duties, only for the prince to reveal that Claudine had mentioned Elexid making a mistake in Maribon. The prince, calling him Al, urged him not to keep secrets, while Elexid fought internally, trying to hide his jealousy from His Highness. Elexid took full responsibility for what happened, stating that a man who cannot make even one wife happy does not deserve to be married at all. Their tense conversation was interrupted when a woman burst into the room, urgently asking if Viscount Fawars was there. The prince recognized her as Claudine and asked what had happened, and she explained that it was an emergency. Claudine stood before Elexid, her face streaked with tears and filled with distress. She delivered the terrible news that Elexid's mother, Duchess Brunel, was in critical condition, shocking both men. The prince immediately ordered El to go home, telling him he had just sent Liliage to the estate and that Claudine should go too. He entrusted Liliage to Elexid's care, explaining that she had been on the verge of collapsing from the news. Elexid affirmed that he understood. A carriage sped away from the building with great haste. Upon arriving at the estate, Alexid demanded to know his mother's condition, and a butler informed him that while the doctor diagnosed a seasonal cold, her fever had persisted for 3 straight days instead of breaking. The butler elaborated that she had lost consciousness at dawn and had not woken since, having tried to act strong and hide her condition. Alexid recalled how his frail mother always brushed off her ailments as being normal for her. He then asked about Liliaj, and the butler confirmed she had recently returned and was in a state of severe distress. Alexid resolved that his mother's condition had to be the priority right now. He walked with purpose through the halls of the estate. He found Liliaj standing in a room, and she turned to him, her expression grim as she spoke his name. A maid informs Lord Alexid that his father has been notified of the situation and that a fast horse was sent with the message. She also adds that Lady Liliaj has remained by his mother's side since she returned. He steps into the dimly lit room to see Liliaj sitting vigil at the edge of the large bed where his mother lies still and pale. As Alexid watches from the doorway, Liliaj tends to his mother with a damp cloth, quietly begging her mother-in-law to wake up. A wave of helplessness washes over Alexid as he realizes that no matter how hard he tries, he can't do anything to change things, and all that is left is to stay by her side. The scene shifts to the dark night sky, where a sliver of a crescent moon hangs amongst the clouds. Back in the sick room, it's noted that the mother's fever has risen again, while Liliaj continues to plead with her not to go. With a pained expression, Liliaj carefully tries to give her mother-in-law a spoonful of medicine. Alexid approaches, gently telling Liliaj it's best if she rests a little, noting that she hasn't eaten in a long time, but as a maid offers to take over, Liliaj flatly refuses. He then offers to stay up through the night to care for his mother so that Liliaj can rest, but she rejects the idea, stating she does not want that. Alexid presses on, suggesting that she at least have something to eat, but Liliaj turns away, saying she has no appetite. She erupts with a loud, "No," cutting off his attempt to persuade her. Distraught, she asks why she should rest alone when her mother-in-law is suffering so terribly. The guilt consumes her as she explains that her mother-in-law was in pain while she was living comfortably in the palace, completely unaware of anything. A sharp, cracking sound effect emphasizes the tension of the moment. Liliaj cries out her mother-in-law's name in anguish. She sits with her back to Alexid, her focus entirely on the woman in the bed. Through tears, Liliaj whispers that her mother-in-law is all she has in the world. The nearby maid covers her mouth in distress, and Alexid watches his wife's profound grief. It pains him to see that even though he is right beside her, Liliaj only has eyes for his mother, repeating that the older woman is the only one she has. Alexid has a sudden, crushing realization that since Liliaj was married off to this country at only 8, his mother was the only person she could ever truly rely on, and he is struck by how lonely she must have been all this time. He reflects on his past choices, thinking that while he and his mother agreed it was best to focus on education until marriageable age, he now understands he should have paid more attention to Liliaj. He concludes with regret that he should have been the one to give her a sense of safety and trust, that exchanging letters was not enough, and that he failed to be the husband she could open her heart to. Liliaj tenderly holds her mother-in-law's hand, her voice soft as she calls to her again. With quiet desperation, she begs the unconscious woman not to leave her. Her quiet sobs fill the room as she clutches her mother-in-law's hand. Suddenly, the hand in her grasp goes limp, a sign that time is running out. Alexid immediately moves to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders to comfort her, assuring her that his mother isn't going anywhere and that with him by her side, she is not alone. He resolves internally that his only goal is to ease her heart, willing to accept rejection or be pushed away if it brings her some measure of peace. Trying to give her hope, he tells Liliaj that his mother was very much looking forward to seeing her in her wedding dress. The maid chimes in, confirming that the lady was always looking forward to the wedding, and the mention of it seems to give Liliaj an idea. Her eyes fill with a new resolve as she leans close to her mother-in-law, pleading for her to hold on and see her in her wedding dress. She insists that until that day comes, her mother-in-law must not go to the other world. Still holding her hand, Liliaj asks if she remembers the wedding they dreamed of and how many times they talked about it together. Alexid looks on in confusion, having never heard of this dreamed-of wedding. Liliaj begins to describe their shared dream, not of a grand cathedral, but of a simple countryside church surrounded by greenery where their whole family would be gathered, laughing together. The vision continues with Liliaj holding the bridal bouquet, wearing the same veil her mother-in-law wore, as church bells ring and white doves fly high. Her description ends with the image of those doves ascending into a clear, open sky. Alexid is left speechless, thinking to himself that he never knew any of this. He sits down heavily, tormented by the thought that he, her husband, had no idea she held such a dream or that she had shared it so intimately with his mother, blaming his own failure to make time for his family. Turning his gaze to his mother, Elexid quietly says that he knows nothing about preparing a bride, so she must wake up soon. He feels ashamed of himself, admitting internally that the delicate preparations of a wedding are completely beyond his abilities. Realizing just how helpless and neglectful he has been, he speaks to his mother again, reminding her how much she insisted on seeing Liliage's wedding dress and that they absolutely need her help to make Liliage a beautiful bride. He resolves that even if he is not the one who stands beside Liliage on that day, he will at least make her dream come true because he cherishes and loves her, and as a way of atoning for his failures, he is prepared to set her free. He vows to do everything in his power to fulfill her wish, accepting whatever comes after, even if she wants to be nothing more than a sister to him. His thoughts drift to the garden party where he hurt her, admitting to himself that he ran away to protect his own fragile pride. Even now his heart aches over it, and he understands it's no wonder she no longer trusts him, yet he feels a desperate need to tell her how he truly feels. He wants to apologize for what he did and share his real feelings, so she is not left with the impression that he looked down on her, hated her, or dismissed her for her young age. His plan is to tell her everything sincerely, and then he will accept her feelings and vow to bury his own. He reflects that his words that day were never meant to cause her pain. As he and Liliage sit together by the bed, his only wish is to make that clear to her. The scene transitions with a simple, clean panel break. Dawn breaks, and the sound of birds chirping can be heard from a nearby rooftop. Liliage begins to stir from where she fell asleep, feeling a gentle hand stroking her hair as she wonders what's happening. Drowsily, she questions when she fell asleep. Her eyes suddenly shoot wide open with a gasp of realization. She jolts upright calling for her mother-in-law, just as Elexid and another voice call out her name. Her mother-in-law is awake, looking at her with a gentle, tired smile, and asks if she was worried. Liliage and Elexid stare back, their faces a mask of shock and immense relief. Overwhelmed with joy, Liliage lunges forward and wraps her arms around her mother-in-law, sobbing her name. As a maid speaks off-panel, a pitcher and basin are shown, with the maid stating it's all thanks to Lady Liliage. The maid explains that the lady regained consciousness just minutes before Liliage awoke, that the doctor has declared her past the critical stage, and that it was Liliage and Lord Elexid talking to her all night that pulled her through. The maid then tells Liliage she should go rest in her room and leave the rest to her, prompting Elexid to say that he will go as well. He puts a hand on Liliage's shoulder, telling her that first, she must eat something, to which she quietly agrees. Liliage gives a small, shy glance from the corner of her eye. A gentle, relieved smile spreads across her face as she thinks of her mother-in-law's recovery. But as soon as the relief hits her, the exhaustion of the ordeal causes her to suddenly feel faint, and she cries out as she begins to fall. Lord Elexid swiftly catches her, startling her as he announces that he will take her to her room. A mind reels with the thought that the situation is simply too much, yet despite it all, there is a way to move forward. She finds immense comfort in his closeness, the warmth and scent of his body a soothing presence. As he begins to pull away, a silent wish forms within her for the moment to last just a little longer. He suggests sending for soup or something similar for her, and she quietly accepts his offer with gratitude. While holding the soup, she feels a wave of relief that her mother-in-law has finally woken up, a fact a doctor confirmed would lead to recovery with rest, yet her complex expression prompts him to ask what's wrong. Her attention shifts to Lord Blexid, and she remarks that he looks terrible, prompting him to confess that he has not been sleeping well lately. She insists that Lord Elexid must rest and take care of himself, but he brushes off her concern, telling her to prioritize her own well-being instead. He finally concedes with an "all right," his smile a gentle expression she has never witnessed from him before. His unexpected kindness makes her feel unworthy, especially after the harsh things she said to him, yet he acts as if the incident in Marisun never happened, and she resolves to stay in the mansion to care for his mother. He agrees to her staying as long as she doesn't push herself too hard, and she in turn urges him to rest properly today. A conviction grows within her that she must speak with this dear person properly. Elsewhere, a woman's voice cuts through the air with a complaint that staying in bed is boring. Several days after the mother-in-law woke up, her health and appetite are returning, but she grows restless, attempting to walk on her own against the maid's protests, leading Lily to offer a violin performance as a distraction. A quiet moment hangs in the air, a pause between scenes. Lily plays the violin as her mother-in-law listens from her bed, the music filling the room. The mother-in-law praises Lilia's excellent performance, understanding why she was chosen for the Crown Princess's recital, but Lily gives all the credit for her upbringing and adaptability to her mother-in-law. The older woman continues to praise Lily as an amazing girl who handles everything herself, contrasting her with Alexid, whom she criticizes for having lost all gentleness and forgotten his crybaby phase. When her mother-in-law expresses a desire to go to the courtyard, Lily gently forbids it, insisting on more rest, privately reflecting that this harshness toward Alexid is simply part of her character. The mother-in-law protests her confinement, complaining that she's fed up after being stuck in her room for days, causing her stamina to drop and her appetite to wane. Lily maintains that a doctor's permission is required before she can leave, acknowledging to herself the difficulty of the situation. The mother-in-law gazes out the window, noting that Alexid has returned, but her thought trails off ominously. A silent, questioning gaze passes between two people. Lily walks from a closed door, a thoughtful expression on her face after whatever she just overheard. She reports to Lord Alexid that his mother is restless and wants to go to the garden, observing that he now seems more open with his feelings. As he approaches, having heard the violin from the garden, she wonders if they are finally at a point where they can be their true selves with each other. He admits to eavesdropping on her performance through his mother's slightly open window and coming down to the garden to hear her play. Calling her Liliage, she lightly scolds him, saying that if he had just asked to listen, she might have played for him. Her words make him stop in his tracks. She turns to face him directly, asking if they can take a moment to talk. Her eyes show a quiet determination as she comes to a decision. The moment has finally arrived, and she knows they must speak honestly before they both drown in the false calm they have been living in. They sit opposite each other at a small table on a sunlit veranda, ready to finally say what needs to be said. She states her intention to tell him the truth, just once, without any lies or pretense, though she worries it may already be too late for anything to change. He starts the conversation by acknowledging their unusual marriage, which began with a contract signed when she was still just a girl. He explains their union was arranged due to the interests of the Serjua royal family, who had sent her to the neighboring kingdom as a child to get rid of her. She confirms she knew of the political circumstances behind their marriage and expresses regret, believing that a more worthy princess would have given him a happy family by now. He cuts her off, stating he doesn't want to dwell on what-ifs, because there is something else, something more important, he needs to say. He prepares to reveal a weakness, a confession that he intentionally distanced himself from her entirely for his own sake. She looks at him, completely bewildered, and asks him to explain what he means. His confession continues with the admission that her innocence was a source of terror for him. He was afraid she would discover the dark desires a man can hide and come to hate him for it, certain she didn't yet understand such things. This fear intensified into a terror that someone would notice he viewed her as a woman and would openly confront him about it. His mind flashes back to the day of the garden party, a pivotal moment of crisis for him. He recounts how other men, intrigued by her presence, had asked him about her, and to drive away their interest, he said things that were the complete opposite of his true feelings. He covers his face in shame, remembering how he spoke those words just to make them stop talking about her. He looks at her with deep regret, confessing he never imagined for a moment that she was there and heard what he said. His voice is heavy as he offers a sincere apology, saying he is truly sorry for having hurt her so deeply. She is rendered speechless, trying to comprehend the truth behind his long-past words. Her mind races, questioning if his claim 2 years ago of not seeing her as a woman was a lie, and though the truth might bring confusion, she needed to hear it. He looks her straight in the eye and declares his love for her. He continues his confession, admitting he avoided her to protect his own dignity and tells her he won't blame her if she now hates him for it. The declaration shocks her to her core. She questions if it's real, that he loves her not as a brother loves a sister, but as a man loves a woman. He acknowledges that having these feelings thrown at her so suddenly must be difficult to process. He had to clear up the painful misunderstanding between them, no matter the personal cost. He then tells her that if she wants a divorce, he will accept it, revealing his mother has already prepared the necessary papers, sending her thoughts into a disoriented spiral. He apologizes for being a terrible husband and asks Liliage to now rely on him only as a brother. A shadow falls over her face as she silently questions this painful turn of events. She clutches the front of her dress, internally crying out why he would call her name with such emotion only to push her away. He stands to leave, thanking her for her time and promising to finalize the divorce and protect her reputation, but she knows that if this conversation ends now, their connection will be severed. The devastating realization hits her that he will forever see her only as a sister, and as he turns back to her questioning silence, she finds her voice. She stands and completely rejects his proposition, her voice filled with disbelief and pain as she challenges how he can say he loves her and then suggests they part ways.